So here with Sean, repeat client. Sean's been out actually for a little bit the last couple of years with got an injury, wrist injury in particular. Had a little bit of wrist surgery, and yeah, very good golfer. Plus lots, but he claims he's only plus a bit in terms of handicap. I know different. He's really +3, +4. So a little bit of a check over everything, really. You're just saying there you rebuilt your own stuff during the last, during lockdown to soften things off. I had a little cyst removed from the wrist.
Yeah, so I struggled. I had wrist surgery last November, sort of 14 months ago now, and was really struggling to load the club. So I had Project X 6.5s, where my wrist couldn't get any compression with the golf ball. So I've built these, which are somewhere between an S300 and an X100, sort of soft stepped X100, just so I could get some compression. I was finding my irons weren't going very far. Last time I came and saw you, my driver was going high right. From someone who's hit draws their whole life, seeing the ball start right and don't come back is quite concerning. So yeah, I've had a ganglion cyst in my left wrist, which just prevented that extension. And since then, been back playing a bit more, practicing a bit more.
But wrist strength and
it's fine. I wouldn't arm wrestle anybody, but can play a bit of golf. Just need to. I think these might be a little soft for me, but see what your thoughts are.
Cool. Grand.
So probably irons are the biggest thing that I'd look at, and then maybe something in the middle there. I prefer playing a golf course that's 7,000 yards long than 6,002, because I'm a better driver of the ball than I am sort of a 4-iron hybrid 5-wood type player. So bit of a recap, we're good.
Grand. I'll have a little measure of, whilst you have a loosen up, I'll have a measure of these ones, so we've got those on fire. And in terms of since making the change in the club side of things, is there anything specifically that you've seen particularly as as the change between? I mean, the Project X's are very kind of midsection stiff, whereas actually the Dynamic Golds are a little bit heavier, but not quite as midsection hard.
I think I hit these maybe too far I think the spin's a little bit too low. I think they might be. God, these are the heads that Jack built for me probably 10 years ago. So I think they're too flat, too strong.
So 712s,
I think I think I get a lot of distance out of the longer irons, like 6, 5, 7. My wedge and 9-iron don't really get that same distance, so the lofts might be off. It's a bit of a mess, really.
And if you had to change anything, I mean, I guess there were a load of compensations going on swing-wise before because you couldn't make the move you wanted to with the wrist. But what's been the main sort of, whether it's change or kind of what have you
just
had to bed in differently with the swing now that you can do what you want to do?
I think from someone who hit big draws, my path numbers and stuff, my whole life, to then going to that wrist surgery where I was hitting blocks right that were then fading. For the last 6 months, I've enjoyed hitting draws again and getting some speed back up. Now I need to get something that's a little bit more under control, softens the flight, tries to sort of take some shape out of it, really. That would probably be my main focus. Because I would feel like I would hit a driver straighter than a 6-iron. Obviously I don't, but that would be my...
And so do you feel like flight's a little bit flat and punchy at the moment?
Yeah.
Ignore that long distance from a spin point of view.
So that's a 6-iron going 200.
There's a half measure on
spin.
Okay,
all right, okay.
Just but those are sort of warm-up balls, so. I've still got a good amount of speed though.
Yeah.
Where are you playing your golf now?
I'm still at West Sussex. So that's why I found I built some AP2s just to try and help me out when the wrist was bad. And because the turf there is so tight, the fairways are almost non-existent in the summer, so almost harder than links. Playing these made a big difference. You get a little bit of a lie that's lying down with a 6-iron, you can't get the leading edge underneath it. So I don't think I'd be able to play anything but blades or something with a pre-worn leading edge. Otherwise, you just would never get it under the ball.
Yeah. I'm saying that's the thing also, kind of where you're not angle of attack wise, it's down, but it's not steep.
No.
So just under 3 degrees down, it's enough to get a nice, compression, nice kind of shaft lean, good impact position. But it's not like you're digging down at the bottom of the arc.
No, and it took me a little while to start hitting down on it at all, really, after having the wrist surgery. It's amazing. You can convince yourself to do it, but at impact, you get out of the way of it.
And has that been actually some of the biggest issue, being get the confidence to keep going with the swing, to get into the back of the ball, to get into the turf?
It definitely was at the start. I think the biggest change was going from hitting block fade right, losing a load of distance off the tee. My ball speed with driver was down in the very low 160s. To then when it got better again, I was enjoying chucking it from the inside, hitting up on it, and seeing it go a lot further again.
And to everyone watching, low 160s is not low, but it's all relative.
We warm up with a few drivers as well, actually. Yeah.
But I think, and that's where different players look at. We all look at courses differently. So you and I would look at a course that's sort of high 6,000, around 7,000, as being almost a more comfortable course to play because bunkers and things are in the right place for us. You're not having to rein it back.
Yeah.
We want something that lets us go towards the 300-yard mark and not kind of feel like there's stuff in the way.
Definitely.
Whereas when you get back at 6,000 odd yards, you've almost got to hit 4 irons and 2 irons off tees, or it actually almost becomes fiddly and harder sometimes to score on.
It's that first tee thing. Would you rather hit a 4 iron off a first tee or a driver? You're like, I'd rather hit the driver with a big head. And I'm a bit like that. I'd rather play a longer golf course just because there's room for me to hit driver.
Are there any, within the iron set, are there any bits that you feel more comfortable with, and that clubs that you feel
I love the driver.
work better, or it's all within the irons in particular?
Within the irons. No, the only thing I would say is I don't think my wedge and 9 iron go far enough compared to what the 6 iron and other bits will go.
Okay.
And then I had one of the, I don't know what these are called, U500 4 irons.
Yeah.
I had that in a 4 iron and was really struggling to get the flight down on it. So I was always trapping it. If I trap it with my path, I can send it left. Yep. So just put an AP2 head in the 4 iron. It made a big difference in bringing the flight down. So I didn't feel like I had to trap it as much.
Got it.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't hate the irons. I just they're very old.
Yeah.
There's not a lot left of them, of the faces. The wedges are okay, I think.
Okay. Yeah, and definitely within the set, there are a few kind of variables in setup. So from a swing weight point of view, in particular, so 7 iron D0.3, which is an anomaly. I don't know whether any lead tape.
I took some lead tape off that.
Right.
Yes. So that is why there is.
So at least it's intentional.
There you go. I should have told you that. Yeah.
But the rest a little bit. Not a million miles off. There's a general progression through. Pitch is a little lighter than the 9. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to match up, but there's probably a little bit of up and down.
They're homemade, aren't they?
But
That's
there's nothing.
They look homemade, don't they?
You'll hardly be surprised sometimes.
Oh, right, okay.
No, but I think they swing weight doesn't necessarily flow exactly, because there are tolerances in everything, whether it's grip weight, shaft weight, balance point, head weights, things like that. So it wouldn't necessarily be a surprise to see a little bit of a wave up and down through the set. So mine don't track exactly because I've got little bits of lead tape to fine tune the feel. Yeah. But I guess going from, ignoring the 7 iron, from 4.2 to 5.5, 8 to 9, and 3.6 into the pitch, that would be where you're likely to find one of those 3 will be more consistent.
Okay.
Just because it'll just tie in a little bit better.
Yeah.
It's not wide tolerances, but there'll be a little bit in and out of sync.
Are they lengthwise? Are they standard-ish? Not
standard. Give or take an 1/8 of an inch.
Okay.
So they kind of sit halfway between they're kind of on or just longer than what standard used to be.
Okay.
So just over 30, so the 637 and 3/8,
Yeah.
where a 37.5 would now be. 37.25 was standard, inverted commas. 37.5 is now, but certainly very, very neutral there. Lies neutral to a hair flattened standard.
Okay. Because I used to get, I think a long time ago, it might have been you that changed me. I used to have my clubs my irons quite upright, and with some of these swings from the inside, seeing them looking left at the start made me feel like I wanted to go
almost
that way.
And in the shorter runs, they'll gear it left a little bit as well.
Yeah, so actually I prefer seeing them a little flatter because it means I can release it a little bit more, whether that's real or...
No, it will, you know, the lie will kind of hold the shot shape a little bit.
It just gives me that feeling of not wanting to drop it underneath.
So I mean, the 8 to 9, there's a 1 degree bigger gap than there, I say should, the vertical should be.
Okay.
Going to 5 degrees there. So that's the 9 and the pitch are in line with one another, but 1 degree weaker proportionally to the rest of the set.
Well, okay, so that's maybe where I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the gap between 9 and 8. If we were going to do a gapping, I think you'd notice it straight away.
Yeah.
So I've got the launch monitor I use at home, and you can see that. Like I struggle to get a 9 iron 150. And I've struggled to get my wedge to 135, but it's my 8 iron, I can jump at it to 170. So there's
right, okay.
So I can feel that gap. And I didn't know if actually it being weaker in the shorter irons made it flatter in the shorter irons made it play weaker, but I don't know.
The only way it could is if that gearing the draw took a little bit of backspin off.
Okay.
With essentially the more lofted, the more upright as it looks a bit left. So it could take a little bit of spin off.
Yeah.
It's one of those also down the bottom. The gaps don't have to be equal. They've just got to be right for what distances you want to hit each one. So you go from 46.25 on the pitch wedge to 52.5 on the 52. So again, it spreads a bit down the bottom.
Okay.
Then we're at 56.5 on the 56. So it's that 9 pitch and gap, for want of a better phrase, are that little bit weaker. So you know, that's certainly something where to look at when it comes to
it'd be interesting to see what you think the frequency of them plays, because I've got no idea where they sit. Because I struggled to say when I had the wrist injury and was struggling to get compression because the speed wasn't there, I was finding that the launch angle was going up because I couldn't get any shaft deflection. So I was having, I played 6.5s for a long time. That's what you fitted me into. I couldn't get the shaft to lean, so the ball was just jumping straight up in the air. It was a lot weaker.
Interesting. Was that post surgery or
no? Before the surgery. Yeah. I didn't have the speed to. I felt like again, feel might have been right. I felt with these I could get some shaft lean and take some dynamic loft off the irons, which I couldn't do with the 6.5s. But again, might have been feel, might have been the profile of the shaft. I don't know.
It'll be. It's one of the dynamic odds are a little bit heavier.
Okay.
So whether that allowed you to feel that you could leave that club behind a little bit more.
Maybe.
Certainly the flex won't really
sense.
affect that. Even though the projects are stiffer through the middle, in theory you'd say, well, should they launch it slightly lower? Possibly based on bend profile, but it's so minuscule.
It's minuscule, I wouldn't have noticed it. So yeah, maybe it's just a feel thing.
So again, the 52's interesting enough the heaviest of the wedges.
Okay.
So that one, that one's got the lead tape on, I think.
It's got loads of it, yeah. And these are all done mainly by feel.
Yeah.
Trying to match it in.
And so it doesn't necessarily, this one doesn't necessarily make it wrong, but certainly to go heavier, mid, light into those bottom end wedges, you'd often see it go the other way or flat line.
Okay.
Because The caveat is if you play your wedge shots, the little shots with your hands and work the face and kind of clip it underneath, then heavy doesn't help that. Whereas for a lot of players where you're trying to quieten the hands down, you're using the weight to drop it in, then a bit more weight kind of helps to get to the bottom of the ball. But if you get someone who plays, it's almost a little wristed look.
Gets rid of the...
wants to flick underneath and play those little kind of flicky shots with the hands, then not so heavy can work. So
I'm definitely a dragger.
Okay.
I definitely drag. My pitching is my worst part of my golf game, probably.
Right.
The distance controlling there. Something I've tried to work on with the launch monitor, actually. But so we play off such tight turf at West Sussex that it's controlling the launch is what I struggle with. It sometimes just pops up a little bit too much.
And is that something, historically, have you had a tendency to almost sort of cup a little bit?
Don't know.
Or not noticeably, nothing you
I think
launch angle-wise not been something you've historically had an issue with?
Never even realised, probably. Because of the relative length I've got off the tee, I normally either have nothing into a par 4, you're in a greenside bunker, or a sandwich or something, so I don't have a lot of pitch shots.
Yeah,
and try not to leave them. I don't know, maybe just something I'm not very good at. Probably get stuck behind me and can't get it back out in front, probably. I'm sure it'd be technique. That doesn't get used at all. That 5 wood.
Okay.
It's something I've never taken it on the golf course. It's just something I'd like to get a shaft for, and I wouldn't bother with that. But I'd like to start playing something like 5 woody. Look at the golf course you play. There's a lot of places where driver just isn't enough room. 2 iron, anything apart from midsummer, it's not going to carry far enough.
Position off the tee club.
I don't know. I think I'd like to play something 5 wood.
Is that more for the approach shots in the par 5s? Or is it more off the tee position? Where do you see that
more be like I'd like a 3 wood still carries. I've forgotten the head, but I use a TSI 3. Carries probably 265, 270. So even that's sometimes a bit too much. 4 iron goes 220, let's say. It's just I've always struggled in that gap there. Hence, there's a hybrid, there's a 5 wood, there's a 2 iron. I'm not sure what.
So get that strategic off the tee. As you say, on the shorter courses, actually, as you say, for most people hitting driver to the 270, 280, if that's your 3 wood, then you're in a position where it's that 240, 250 distance, which is the key one.
Yeah, and I find most people that I play with that are maybe a little bit shorter than me, they're going to be more accurate with driver at 240 than I would be with 2 iron or 3 wood. So hence I would. But again, that's something that I think Jack built for me. I think.
Got an eye rod. Oh, I haven't seen one of those for a while.
Again, that's got to be 10 years old probably.
Yeah, 913. Yeah, it'll be 10 years next year. Yeah. Or actually about now. Actually thinking about it. I think I've always September launches. Yeah.
I think I've kept those clubs to try and find an answer in that space. I guess.
And so it's the difficult bit is there's rarely ever an absolute right or wrong.
No.
It's normally it's like a puzzle where you got to find the right shape for the right shaped hole. It's just got to work.
So I built that club. I can't remember 3 years ago we had a complete drought, and I was playing at Walton Heath, and I couldn't get an iron to stop. It was rock solid. Yeah. So I built that out of necessity, and it really worked. But otherwise, it doesn't.
That's a it's a 25-degree hybrid.
Yes. Yeah, I don't tell people that. But it's that was built out of some of the rock hard fairways that we've had, and just not being able to almost hit anything off the tee because it just wouldn't stop.
Or just run and run.
Yeah, so that was quite useful on some of the shorter golf courses to try and get the ball to stop a bit.
Grand. So the only issue you got with that one is the face is gone.
Oh, has it? It's cracked, is it?
Just starting to go a little concave.
Put that in the bin then, I think.
So it'll produce some interesting flights and spins.
That's interesting. There you go. I can go in the bin then.
It's not gone. However, it's and that one because of with it being a little bit more loft, you'll naturally get a little bit more on top of it to squeeze it, and then especially when you get the really firm turf, you're pinching the ball between the. There's no give in the turf, so it just goes all the energy goes into the face, so it just then caves it in a little bit. So
I find I can hit very slappy, this 2 iron. I don't know if the shaft's just a bit too firm or.
It can often be. Sorry, phone's multitask miserably.
Yeah, that's right.
with irons with hybrid shafts in, it's one of those where it just depends whether that allows you to swing it this way. So I play my 2-iron with the same shaft as irons in, steel shaft in. And you're going from, I mean, that's still 105 gram shaft, but you're going to 125, 127 in your 4-iron. So there's actually still 30% difference.
Okay.
And even though it's structurally very solid, the balance point in a composite is going to be higher up than it is in steel. So it may well be that that's probably where it's a little snap. You'll probably lose the bottom end on it a little bit. And it could
I
be
just struggle
that
with
a
strike
lighter,
more than, I don't tend to misstrike the golf ball very often. Shouldn't really say that at the beginning of the fitting, but on this club, I tend to miss it a lot high. I can never work out where I want a tee height, whether I want to hit a punch with it, whether I want to give it a little bit like a 3-woody type.
So that's probably where you just say lose the bottom end, overwork the weight of the shaft and get a little bit. Whereas with the steels, it'll drop into plane. You can keep pressure on the handle, keep accelerating, and cover it naturally a little bit more. It'll find bottom out a little more regularly. If it gets a little light, you'll just lose it a little bit on the way down. So chances are probably a lighter steel than a 125, 130 gram, but you're probably looking at 115 to 120 gram. You only need to lose about 5%, and it becomes that bit easier to swing. But chances are that, or it might just be like one of the proper kind of composite shafts. It might be something like a steel fibre in the 110, or things like that Nippon Ghost shaft, where the balance literally goes a little more down the bottom. It swings a bit more like steel, just lighter.
I had to go with a steel fibre and didn't get on with it.
So, and even that might still be the weight's a little too high up.
Okay, that's interesting.
So that would certainly be something I'd look to that, to certainly compare that with a steel, albeit lighter than you've got. Because if you're someone who tends to even if you're not steep on it, to want to get that shaft lean and feel that kind of that hands ahead impact position, that if you lose the weight too high up, it starts to go the other way. It's almost gone on you.
And I think
that could well be the issue with that.
That's what it does feel like. And I want to be in a position where I feel like my 2-iron, if I am hitting it, is a little bit more secure than what I normally do is just tee driver down like that and try and slice it. And that shouldn't be an easier shot than sweeping one of these off. It shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't be. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So so I think it's a good getting all that kind of base info in. I think what's interesting that the 2-iron is loft liner is actually it's a lighter swing weight than the rest of them.
Okay.
So other than your 7-iron, so that again that adds weight to that bit of right. Well, can you feel the club head enough in terms of is that mass doing enough to stay with you in the swing? And for the reasons you're using it, you don't want to have to kind of back off it and steer it. You want to be able to stand and commit to it. And, pretty strong loft. Is it meant to be a strong loft?
I don't know.
It's down at 15.5.
Oh, that might be why it's slapping.
So it's a little loft.
Because I hit it and it sort of like does the driver knuckle no fly.
Well, that could well be where if it has a little bit.
That might explain a few things. Because if I hit the middle on it, it's a lovely club. Yes, with the lack of loft, that explains why I'm hitting the top of the face a little bit more, alongside what you've been saying.
I think also, I think, and so if you lose that bottom end, you're going to go that way, and then the natural strike point's up the face rather than working towards the bottom half. So both elements have strong consideration for us. So
there's a lot of mismatches in here.
I've seen a lot worse. So good news is most of it makes sense.
Okay, that's good.
Point. So, are you ball-wise tend more towards Pro V1 or Pro V1X?
Pro V1, I like launching it a little bit lower. So
cool.
I don't know if that's right. If the Pro V1 launches lower than the X, but that was.
I
know they flipped it, didn't they, a couple of years ago?
Yeah, with the firmer core on the Pro V1X, it was easy to get the cover to grip a little bit more, kind of squeeze the cover into the grooves, get a bit more spin. But that also then made it easier to make it a higher launching ball as well. So. So even the left dash Pro V1X is a higher launching ball, but it's very low spin from the core. So we'll have a couple more looseners and we'll get a bit of data with that 6-iron there and see where we're at. Would you take dead aim and it would start right and draw back, or would you aim right for it to draw back?
I shape everything. So I never try and play. I can't hit the ball straight, if I'm honest. I can hit a draw and I can hit a cut. And if I hit a little fade, it will go relatively straight. But I will tend to aim away. I tend to very rarely hit full iron shots. just to control the distance. But
Yeah.
a fullish one will turn over 5,
Yeah.
10 yards maybe.
Got it,
Yeah. But if I'm, want to hit it a bit straighter, I'll...
Yeah.
So I don't know if it helps with fitting, but yeah, I try and everything's a shot. I suppose I grew up with always having speed, and grew up with really soft driver shafts and iron shafts. So I've always had to shape stuff because I could never. I used just a standard stiff driver shaft up until my mid-20s. So
Yeah.
I've always had to use my hands to sort of control the flight.
And I know part of it will be situational in terms of what the hole's doing in front of you. But if you're between clubs, if it was pin middle of the green, like a completely nondescript, no wind, would your default to go between clubs be? Would you play a shot shape to take a little bit of distance off?
Yeah.
Would you alter pitch of flight? How would you play those?
Short irons I would put back and draw to control it. Longer irons I would take one more, open the face and cut it.
Okay.
Because if I take something off a 5-iron, slow down, get behind, and it gets behind me, I can flip it.
Okay, yeah.
So
and the flips are more likely to miss than the block, right? Yeah.
Definitely. So I tend to cut the longer ones and put the shorter ones back in my stance. It's quite hard to move them too much. So, yeah. So if I wanted to take a bit of yardage off a 6, I'd sort of...
Okay.
Do that type of shot.
Yeah.
So I felt if I did that, trying not to play a fade and got it stuck, which has happened, you're reloading on a tight hole.
I think also one of the things with your action-wise, your tempo-wise, and tempo really is tuned that we're all within ourselves. You have your muscle, you're a fast twitch. Everything's done at a fairly breakneck pace. So everything's that's just your natural rhythm would be the way I'd describe it. Whereas someone like Els is long and languid, and so walk slow, talk slow, swings with crazy smooth rhythm. You're more of a Nick Price.
Yes.
But you're very body oriented. And I think that's possibly where I think from a flight meet, if the dynamic goals aren't particularly prominent balance point, they're actually quite an even weight profile through. So you've got plenty of weight there, but they're not toe heavy. So you're very much and you see you're actually kind of there.
Okay.
Partly if you threw path off and got two hands, it could literally spray anywhere. But you're very much it's a strong body rotation. It's not a kind of a pull with the arms and a flick with the hands.
Okay.
So when you shape it, so looking at the data here, the fade swing 3.5 out to in, previous one draw, couple into out, and the same you see when you went to fade the other 5 degrees out to in, 4 into out from a draw. So you're moving path rather than necessarily your face stays pretty neutral to target. It's just how far do you move the swing line rather than what do you do with what happens with the face is resultant on the path rather than you moving the path because you're going to flip the face. If that makes sense, that way around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've always played that way. I'd feel uncomfortable on flags in the middle of the green with a 5-iron and seeing no shape. I'd much rather be playing dog leg holes and things like that. I find it, I would, I feel handsy though, so it's interesting that you say it's done with body rotation.
Well,
I feel
it's done
all done
primarily
with my hands.
so that what the hands do is a reaction to where the path goes. Okay. So if you're more naturally handsy player, what we'd see is more of a kind of a drop, a lag, and a rotation. Whereas for you, it's that way with the path, or it's that way with the path, and so you feel what the hands are doing. But if you didn't move the path, then the start line probably wouldn't be far enough off, and then it would go haywire. So you've got to move your path because you're not. There is differentiation in terms of face to path, but the prime bit that's moving the shot shape is your path.
Yes, I'm not doing that to hit a draw.
So you're getting club face back to target line, but you're moving the path to create the differentiation rather than the hands doing it. You just got to aim somewhere else. Okay. So you still set up pretty neutral, but it's very much a case of what direction do you send the club in to shape it rather than what do you do with the face. Okay. So
It's nice to know. So, you don't know how you do it.
But because the way you really is when you finish, it's there. It's very, very connected. So you're not getting like someone like Rory, his hands. You see him doing that and finishing round and over, or you see him there and holding it off. With you finish there, or you finish there. Okay. It's not massive changes in plane that facilitates then the face rotation.
Because I used to swing all the way round like that. But I felt that if I was ever going to get one turning, it would with that with the swing, and it didn't produce any more speed.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, actually, if I can feel like I just hold it.
Yeah. Well, that's where that compactness comes into it, because you say if there was, it's more controllable. One, you could argue dead hands is more controllable, but actually, it's also a bit of it because you've got that sharper tempo. Have you ever seen a quick tempo player who flicks his hands all over the place?
No.
Nick Price, was it not Chad? Played Ryder Cup, played at Celtic Manor.
Chad Campbell? No.
Chad Campbell.
Is it Chad Campbell?
Yeah. You got some
Texan,
of the quicker, sharper tempos. They've all got that sort of almost sort of sawn-off
abbreviate finish.
Because if with that you start to throw your hands into it, then it lassos miles.
Definitely.
So the two tend to go together.
Okay.
So certainly makes sense with those dynamic goals. There is a reasonable bit of swing weight there. You have got a good bit of feel of the club head, but it's isolated head rather than weight through the bottom half of the shaft.
Okay.
And it's really whether, look, data-wise, it was a fade swing, launch and spin window, probably spins on the slightly stronger side of mid.
Yes. I can't remember if these were bent when I was struggling with getting it out there to help me a bit when I was struggling. I can't remember.
They're stronger than the standard would have been. So,
okay.
And that's just edit that because that number's not right. So 6 irons at 29 and a quarter.
Okay, so maybe 2.
So it's kind of the equivalent of the old kind of vertical tall loft. So a couple stronger than where they would have started at, but pretty neutral now.
Okay.
Yeah. So, flight-wise, there's not an awful lot to improve on the trajectory of that. If you look at the draw shot, inevitably with the face closing and turning down, it's a little bit lower spin. So I wouldn't be looking to try to bring the flight down from where it is, for the same reason you said earlier about make sure you get that control on the greens. But the fade swings get you that one a little bit more of a pull, get you back up to the 5,000 mark.
Yeah.
But it's if you visually prefer a slightly stronger flight,
I do.
It's in a great window.
I just think we play a lot in the wind, don't we? That's the thing. I think if I was travelling more, played in the US, I think the higher flight makes sense, but most of the time it's windy, isn't it? Like
a lot
most
of the top events are on links courses.
Yeah.
It's you're going to Hunstanton or down to Royal St George's or down to Saunton. You might get the odd one at Woodall Spa or Sunningdale or something like that. But even then, with the length you hit it, how often are you hitting a 190, 195 yard 6 iron into a green and needing it to it's a par 5 most of the time, or a long par 3. So where you're going to get the height anyway off the tee. So so good marker. Obviously the 7 iron is the one that I would say that's going to be a little light in the head. You're likely just to flip.
Yeah, I took the lead tape off that recently just because it was falling off. So,
but they don't look in a bad place. I think it's just a question of certainly they'll feel more responsive than the Project X.
Okay.
Going up in weight, is that getting a little bit behind you and having to play catch up? Can we get a slightly more control by getting a few grams out and get it coming with you so you can actually get your hands in front of it? Or are you having to just shove them forward?
Yeah, as I say, I played Project 6.5
but they're working
longer.
well.
Yeah, then I don't feel they're terrible. They for what they look like.
Artisanal.
That's it. Yeah. I think that's worth a try.
So I'll get the current version of that head. So keeping that the same.
Yeah.
We'll just work the shaft weight down a little bit and see what we can do. Do you want to take a little bit of the in terms of something like the Project X? You're going to get because of the very hard kind of middle section to it. Are you conscious of wanting to try and keep a bit of sting out of the wrist?
No, not at all. There's no problem at all.
Yeah,
no, not at all.
Yeah.
No. Only my ball striking ability at this time of year probably gives it a bit of a sting. Bladed 3 irons and stuff.
Okay. And then do you prefer a tighter feel? Something that feels almost a crisp ball, feels like gives it a little bit of pop back, or really not a major bit as long as the ball does what you want it to do?
As long as I can still feel that I can shape it, I guess. I've tried stuff, I've had to go with like an X7 or something, or Project X 7.0s, and it's way too stiff. I can't feel it, I can't move it, I can't do anything with the golf ball. So I know what too stiff feels like. So.
Utter planks, though. Yeah. And they're just very, very heavy. It's a 137 gram shaft.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. It's brutal.
Yeah, I've
Absolutely
never used something like that until I had to go recently, and it's just not for me.
Can you just nip that tip's a little bit long? So you can just nip a quarter inch, eighth of an inch off that.
And so we most of the time we're playing in a wind, so you're normally taking spin off stuff, and not hitting them harder.
What's your favourite kind of golf do you like there?
I'd like to play links golf all the time.
You've got to play shots the whole time.
Yeah. Just the weather.
I played when I was down at two of the old boys' taunts. I played in the Halvertier and the Grafton Morris. One's at Sandwich, one's at Hunstanton. This year, cumulatively, the wind is the strongest I've ever had. Cumulatively, thank you. So 16th at Royal St George's is about 160.
Yeah.
And people hitting 2 irons at it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was and then up in Norfolk was a. God, I'm trying to think how many club wind was it? But about a 4 or 5 club wind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I played Royal St George's once in a practice ground and drove the 5th.
Right, yeah.
And then hit driver on 6 into the par 3, short, and decided it was time for lunch. Yeah.
So those that 5th at Royal St George's is really, it's sort of there's some massive great hills that I think back in 2003, I think Daly went over the corner on. But for that to be on, no matter how long a hit you are,
I've never ever felt the wind start my downswing for me.
Yeah.
I think I hit driver into 6 about 160 yards.
Yeah.
So it was time to go in.
Those are the days you just ruin your game.
Just not achieving anything and losing a lot of golf balls. But it is fun downwind though. It's a nice story to tell.
That 7th tee shot would have been fun.
Yes.
How far do you hit it? Well, I only hit about 50 yards into the green, par 5. Okay.
They then close play because the 10th there is quite exposed, as it's the most exposed hole. So if the ball start blowing on that green, they call people in. So would you think blades is a head profile?
Well, it's one way. I mean, from a blade point of view, I mean, certainly the neater sole shape that you get out of it, where. And so where you're not heavily downward into it, but you do get a bit of shaft lean. You'd want that to be able to get into the back of the ball. Go too much bounce, it will feel like it's hard to get the leading edge into the base of the ball. But I mean, also for you, it's about giving you that control over flight and spin. And whilst technically blades are technically they are a bit less forgiving than other head styles. Actually, what that higher centre of gravity does, it gives you the mass of the club is right in the back of the ball, so it gives you absolute control over launch and spin. There's nothing of the club head trying to kick to give it more distance. So and that's why the best ball strikers on tour still use them. They could play more forgiving, but there's not the same. I mean, so for you, we don't want that one that jumps and goes long.
No.
That's much more troublesome than the miss hit that comes up short because you know what you're dealing with. Yeah. So the one thing that the blade gives you is exactly that. You're never, other than a flyer, which you kind of know by the lie or if it's wet conditions, you're never going to get a shot that goes a distance that you're not expecting. Yeah. Whereas for a high handicap player, we're guarding against the one that's a miss hit that comes up short. We want it to make up the distance. For you, we don't want the one that jumps. Yeah,
and I think for me, with not having the blades where we play, the fairways can almost be non-existent in the summer. So if it sits down a little bit and you've got something with even a tiny sole, you end up getting it back there to try and get the leading edge underneath it and trap it even more, which is the opposite of what you're trying to do.
And some of it also is you're very used to the centre of gravity on a blade is slightly more towards the heel, and the part of it is you'll use the feedback you get from strike point, you'll zone in strike. Okay. So if you go to, I was doing a test earlier with something, and it was with a T100 that's got the current APT, it's got tungsten in the heel and the toe. And if I mishit it, that I could feel where that tungsten was. It felt kind of a bit hard and a bit dead, because I used to play like blades from 5 iron down. And you kind of, I'm so used to a certain feel and feedback from the head that I'm not worried about mishitting one. I just, against that control side, part of it's what you're used to and what you're used to feeling, as your kind of validation of a good shot or not. And it can be quite hard to lose that feedback, actually.
I feel I hit. I feel like I hit more better shots with a smaller head.
It can focus you a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah,
That feels so much more stable.
So you're going to sort of change a couple of things up as we go. So obviously, you can go heavier, as we know from the X7, but we're not going heavier.
No.
Just bring it down a little bit, just to drop. This is sort of 5 or 6 grams or so. Purpose really seeing if we can get, as you fire, because you fire fast. The moment that club gets behind you, your hands will make up for it, but it'll just lose a little bit of the finer control.
Okay. It feels a lot more stable.
Certainly stiffer under the hands, this one. Okay.
See, that's the one I would get underneath a little.
Just hit a little fade. Okay. That's good. I'll take that a little further. That's good. So that was the...
Feels nice.
Ironically, the Modus 130, which is ironically 125.
Okay,
So designed very stable up here.
Yeah.
A little bit of kick in the bottom end, because if they didn't, it would literally be a poker.
Okay. I didn't feel anything.
But it's one that's one that Casey's used, Garcia. So doing some pretty strong loaders. So where you have that sharp change of direction, that's going to feel like it really stays with you.
Oh yeah, I really like that. I feel really nice. I could definitely feel, compared to mine, I can feel the bend here in mine. I feel like I load that. I didn't get that with that.
Yeah, so the middle's definitely, so the middle's definitely a little bit softer in the true tempers.
But it didn't feel harsh at all.
So let's just take you back to...
Yeah, my straight one's a fade.
Let's take that off a little. So did you start playing very young?
Yeah, but was mainly playing football. Just played golf as as a young kid would play anything really. But I sort of started taking it more seriously in my mid-20s. I think when I first came and saw you, I was off 4, 5, 6. And that's when I saw the biggest jump in handicap. So we'd have talking 10 years ago probably. Yeah. I would have been using a standard stock stiff shaft, 10-degree head, was hitting 30-yard draws. Yeah. And that's when I saw the drop, when we got fitted with it was a blue O-band shaft, 7-degree, Titleist 913. So just completely changed my game, and my handicap dropped quickly.
You can hear the difference off the face in terms of structurally here with that one. It creates just a slightly different note, a little bit of a harder sound.
It's a little neck side and the face turned over there.
Okay, so with this one, the balance is a little more down the bottom, which actually has created a little bit more shape.
Yeah.
So it's got a little more behind, and that's where that catapult comes from.
I couldn't feel it at all. Couldn't feel the head at all there.
Okay, so that shows actually where it's good that the dynamic golds haven't been too tip heavy.
Okay.
In that the moment the balance goes too much down the bottom end, as you fire it does that, and then you've got to
save it.
To save it, and you get that well, like the first one there, the face to path was more than the path, so it ends up being close to target where it's just whipped across and through.
And the strike was in the heel as well.
And then the next one you sent the path more right to try and mitigate the start line.
Yeah.
But the problem then is you try and play the fade, that it then goes on you and still goes left.
It's amazing how much you react to those feels, isn't it, in split seconds?
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that it's so fast, and our instincts are incredibly good at. It's really sensation of balance and where the club is relative to where you are. So you adjust very quickly. You tend to find inevitably the lower handicap someone's going to get, the quicker they adjust to it. So sometimes, like with you, I've probably got one swing to see how naturally something works. Then by the second one, subconsciously you'll have found a pattern that feels comfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll all given 1, 2, 3 swings, start to find the compensation coming. So the initial test bit is really a couple of swings go right, good, bad, more controlled.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll find too light and we'll bring it back up. But whereas with the nip on there, you could see much better connection. You're able to control the flight,
Yeah,
and
it
the
felt
shape. Whereas
great.
this one's just trying to get away from you.
All right, interesting. Yeah, I thought I'd get on okay with that because it's a familiar shaft.
Yeah.
But yeah, the motors felt a lot better.
So yes. So it's going to go similar weight to the modus, but a little bit higher bounce again.
Okay.
So you're going to play much competitive golf next season?
I'd like to, because I've had injuries and health issues over the last couple of years. So I'd really like to. Because I think the good thing about having a low handicap is you get to play on some of the really great golf courses and set up in tournament conditions. You know, played the Living Trophy a few years ago. Yeah, play well and you've broken 85 type golf course.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to just to experience those golf courses really.
Yeah, it's a pity that on holes like course like that are going to sort of off the open rotor.
Yeah, because
they just can't get the crowds around them.
There's no room. Yeah, so that's by far the toughest course I've ever played. That felt nice.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. The moment we get the weight away from the bottom end, the face to path number's more under control straight away, and that's where you're able to keep the handle end working through rather than dropping behind and then going that way. So keeping it kind of a club rather than throwing too much weight down the bottom where it can get a bit detached lead ball into a piece of string kind of thing, that forces you to have to play catapult and work the toe back in.
I can feel almost by the time I've got to here whether it's a good swing or not with that.
Better connected.
Yeah.
That looked very free through. Okay. And just that little fade swing again.
Yeah, I really like this.
Okay. It's going to compare back to that previous one. I played with them a couple of years back and went with a best school friend of mine. We had a 40th present. And we played Hoylake and Formby and Lytham. And Lytham, I think I had the best driving round I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah.
So I kind of came off the course going, oh, that was all right. Other than I mentally blew up in the last couple of holes because scoring much better than I thought I would. But yeah, that doesn't, there's no room for missing.
People talk about Adam Scott blowing up on the last 3 holes, but 17 and 18, there's nowhere to hit your tee shot anyway. You could have maybe laid back a bit more, but it still doesn't leave you, there was no easy route into those last 2 holes off the tee.
There we go, so that's just back to that nip-on shaft.
Is this the modus, is it?
Yeah, it's interesting having changed the projects where it didn't swing as well, then gone to something back that was comfortable again. It's very interesting to switch to this from partly a feel point of view, but also whether it's as clean. I think for you playing shots, it's how simple it feels to play the shot that you want it to.
Yeah.
From a through the ball point of view.
They feel very similar.
Mm.
Just try and take a bit off one. Yeah.
Interesting one. Okay, I'm going to switch it back. So this one looks like it needs marginally more. So on the first swing, you see it just not behind, but a little more of a drop. It requires you to work slightly harder to get it through the ball. Mm-hmm. Very slightly. If I can get it out.
I just don't. I feel with those 2 shafts, I don't get almost like I sometimes get like a bit too much of a deflection on that.
Yep.
On the X100s.
Yeah,
I
think some of that is it is structurally a little. These are both a little tighter. So I mean the Tour V 125, which is technically the same weight as that, and it was a shaft designed for Mickelson. So it was originally designed for him. That was what he used when he won the Open at Muirfield.
Okay.
Structurally a very stable, very stable shaft. And again, the modus designed to be kind of pretty heavily loaded in the butt end. The 120, the lighter one, is more tip stable, whereas the 130, they put the stability up the back end.
So it's not just a case of the difference between the 120 and the 130 is heavier. They're completely different shafts.
Quite different structures. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's whether part of it's whether this. Well, I'll let you hit one before I open the mouth.
See if I can put a bit of speed into it. Yeah. So hit that one a little harder, and it stays with me.
For me, that's slightly cleaner through. I know that one's drawn a little bit more. It worked a bit more speed on that. Some players like to feel like they can kind of pull on the club a little bit more, of which the modus gives you that slightly more. To me, that's just a little bit, allows you to stay a little more dead arm through the ball.
Okay.
It just comes with the body turn a little bit cleaner, or a little more easily rather than more cleanly.
Poor strike.
Interesting.
I feel like I could hit most shots with this.
I think my feeling between that one is it's going to be easier to play one that starts to the left, fades back.
This one.
That one looks like it's going to want to drop in behind a little more, but it's also got to. You also got to feel like you can do what you want to with it.
Yeah. So we go with this. Try and play a straight cut.
I'm going to put a little bit more swing weight on that. Just give you a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it does feel a little light at the bottom.
Just a little bit.
For me, it's like if you make a bad swing, does the club feel like where it was for that bad swing? And like with the 6.5, I couldn't have really told you where the face was. It just came out as a bad one. Whereas these, if they're going left, the club's where I've put it.
It's got a little bit more head weight on that. So it's still about a point under where you are with the dynamic golds.
Okay.
So swing about just over D3. Okay, that looked better.
Yeah, felt a bit better.
That little extra head weight definitely looks like you can keep going with the swing a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to...
I enjoyed that. It feels really nice.
Okay, let's just... Sideline that. And with these, it's really fine tunes on them because if we go dead weight lighter, as you put power onto it, it's just going to get away from you. That's where I think that one's likely to be. It's just not going to be there to hit against, so you're... Almost best shots for that are going to be the ones where you just almost clip it away, take a little bit off it and don't go for it.
Exactly.
Whereas we want you to be able to commit onto it, but then have the control to play a quieter one as well. And I think it's having a little bit more guts in the well, by dropping under 125, you're just going to lose that.
Yeah. I feel like I could, that iron shaft, I felt if it went up to a 2-iron, I think I could play that iron shaft in there, I think.
Finally got down to pull it's probably a couple of years back with a good mate of mine, Jamie Donaldson, who's he finally gave me enough notice on a trip over to get down there and play it with him, and it was lovely.
Yeah,
it's one of those I'd never got to before.
Yeah, no, it's nice. It's for me, it's great.
Well, he would say so.
Yeah.
No, not the Jamie Donaldson, the Welsh one who's played on tour, or the aim point guy, but chap, I played Europro Tour with him and some of the amateur stuff. He played England golf.
I've never played with Jamie, but I heard he's a really good player.
He's relentless.
Yeah.
I sadly very rarely get the better of him, and rarely have ever got the better of him on a golf course. But
our place is great. You know, after work you can fly around in 2.5 hours. Every tee box is next to the green.
It's a course that flows really well. Yeah.
unless you're
and
playing.
it's beautiful as well.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's just if you're not having a great day with only fairway or heather, it can. Yeah.
Oh, you just got to admire the view.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, get rid of that straight away.
That went.
So you could see that straight. So you could see that. So the reason why, to anyone watching, I very quickly took that out is in transition. I'm looking for how the club comes down. So with Sean there, you can see it just go compared to what we've been using.
Okay.
It just. And I'd have to weight the head up a lot, and then you end up just detaching the weight again, which I don't want to do. So, and because we've got a couple of, well, one very good option there, I know it wasn't as good. So
No, yeah.
And so there was still a KBS shaft, that one, just the dollar taper, and they just design-wise and flight-wise quite similar. In theory, the dollar taper is quite a low, slightly lower launching shaft, but it's just really where that weight position goes between them. They're really marginal differences.
Yeah, because if you're not seeing it with the eye that you've got, that looks like an okay golf shot. It's probably on the front edge of the green.
Yeah,
it's just how it gets there.
It is, and it's you. There are times where you might think, I'll give that one more, but that one it went early, and if it goes straight from the top, then the club's never dropping into play.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So you'll find a way of making it. Given enough swings, you'll find a way
of
to make it work.
But
that's not the idea we're here.
No. Yeah, here's a set of clubs. Try these. You'll eventually make them work.
But ironically, what people don't realise, a lot of what goes on tour is that's just trial and error.
Yeah, of course it is.
The off season they'll zone things in, and the big boys will go to the the likes of the headquarters in the States, and they'll almost sort of make clubs for them.
Yeah.
As in terms of sort of adapt the heads and. But it's a lot of the time when they're in between, so at tournaments trying to maybe sort of test something out. It's we'll try this. That one, okay, that one feels better. I mean, some of it is just sticking plaster because they're not feeling as comfortable that week.
Yeah.
But there's not a vast amount of science involved with it. It's about getting through the week, getting through the tournament.
Yeah.
Deal with it in the off season.
Is it a little longer? No?
If it is, it'll be an 1/8 of an inch maximum.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I quite like this. It was okay.
Okay.
One more?
Yeah, I think the fadey one as well, I think. So this one's the Open, the CT125.
Okay.
So
there we go.
that's the one that then, whilst shape-wise is fine, again, you can kind of see it just not quite dropping the plane. So it's close.
I think the last couple you've given all feel better than my one, but the KBS was really good.
I'll put that one back in. Having gone to a couple of others, I'll put that back in. Make sure I pick up the right one. And that's where so for a lot of players, we're just trying to get the consistency of a stock shot right. For you, you're going to play a lot of shots there, and actually the little nuances between playing a little fade, little draws, that's the bit that's going to highlight which one's best.
Well, if you're aiming left and trying to play a cut and it drops behind you, you're in big trouble.
Is that going to be? Try to get that swing weight the same as we had it. There we go.
How much swing weight do you need to see something up before you start seeing a player notice? Is it?
There are some. So there's a chap who now works with TaylorMade, who we've known for a long, long time. Who and I'm actually the same in terms of what I feel like. 0.1, 0.2. But he used to also be able to feel a 5 gram difference in a hockey stick, which you're not meant to be able to do. So he's one of the most sensitive creatures I've ever met. And others, you can shift it a point before you start to really, and always about a half a point would be about where you start to see a difference. And if the player allows themselves to feel it, they'll feel it.
Yeah.
It's kind of just accept that actually it's just levers and it will make a difference.
Yeah.
It's a little difference in, I know it's closed down a touch more.
Yeah.
But in terms of that transition down where it just drops and the club drops into plane, which for me kind of shows you can, the club's in the right place. It's just, is that a reaction to something you've done before, or is it just your hands getting used to, actually, I don't need to do this with this club. You probably find relative to those, you've got to make a little bit more of an effort to get it through.
Yeah.
And the initial adjustment's going to be not over shaping a bit, because suddenly these things don't have to do anything. You can just leave the face online.
Yeah. I like it. I think it's really nice.
Yeah, I think just that fade one again.
Just lost it a little bit underneath, but
Dragged it a little.
that's me rather than.
Just dragged it a little bit.
Yeah, just didn't open it enough.
I think that's the one that's keeping, and so that it almost shows a little bit of how much you've had to just pull on them a little bit more than maybe ideal with
Yeah,
those.
Just see what it reacts like with a bit of speed.
Very connected. Yeah.
I really like that.
So it's, whilst there have been a couple of shots that have gone slightly more to the left, that I think this is the case of hands getting.
Yeah, that's me.
You'll
definitely.
just develop compensations to play shots with the heavier weight. It's actually just them unlearning some of those, because the ones, they still look very clean in terms of into the ball. It's just a question of where you manoeuvre the club face to. Mm-hmm. That's probably where you say you feel a little handsy, because you've got to make those little last minute adjustments with those that you're not going to have to. And that's really going to be the difference. They can quieten off and start to just allow the club to stay square through the ball rather than having to square it at the ball.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that I'm swinging a different club and I need to react differently to it.
Just with this, just look at lie with this one as it is. But then, so you're about 5 grams difference on total weight.
Okay.
And as a result of that slight change in dead weight, balance point, it's just about a swing weight point lighter. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
those
I'm
last
starting
couple,
to learn it a bit. It
just
feels good.
zone in. That also, you see
It's
lie
okay.
there is dead square, so stick on to what I was doing with the lie. It's done in previous fits as well. As you can see, that's absolutely kind of dead square up the face. So, and this one's actually, it's on or maybe even a half a degree flatter. So, you know, again, where the better you get the weight, actually your hands will get a little bit lower. The more out of sync they go up a little bit. So the more we keep it working with, handle can stay a little lower, hence the slightly flatter lie. So we're erring now, doing more slightly flatter lies than standard.
Okay, yeah.
Because as you know, swings become a little bit more rotational over the last, from technique point of view, the last few years, more big muscle controlled. So actually that naturally, as you clear out the way, drops the hands down rather than there and fetching it, hands go higher and the toe goes down. That way, handle low, the heel stays down a little bit more. So
I think for me it's just a visual thing. If I've looked down and, you know, rounded posture, that I always feel my toe sits a little high in the air. If I've got anything upright, it looks like it's looking a long way left.
Yeah.
So I react and get rid of it.
Yeah.
That feels lovely though. That feels really nice.
And fly-wise is in the same place. You know, it's exactly the same loft as your current set. You know, there's a nice, I mean, those couple in particular. You know, that was the sort of the faded one.
Yeah.
Go, what was it? No, that was that last one there. So 4 into out, 2 closed, 4 and a bit, 2.5. But actually,
Push
in terms
draws,
of the shot wise, as you start to get used to not having to make those compensations, just club speed. You know, one at 95.71 and 94.3, and there's, you know, half a club difference just through club speed. But the shot shapes don't allow you to hit the same shape each time, rather than almost having to play around with it slightly more. You're still playing with shape, but it's just going to tighten up, kind of crisp up the edges a little bit.
It definitely feels cleaner, more under control, less sloppy. I don't know if they're the right words, but that's what that club feels like compared to those.
I think that ties in the extra weight. That's when you say sloppiness, so how it's just not having to do that so much through the ball.
Yeah.
Where you can get it there, but there's a little bit more going on than just being there, and that little bit less you've got to do through the ball. The face is online, it allows the face to stay online a little bit longer. but just means that, again, with you, where you can move the shot with the path, you haven't got to worry about the other bits that the hands are doing as well. So you should be able to hit little shapes a little bit more, rather than having to move it 10 yards, you can move it 4 or 5. Rather than having to sling it 15 yards right to left, you can just have the chance like that one's.
I can aim at the middle of a green and land it on the middle of a green, I guess.
Yeah, you've got, that's gone 9 yards.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the earlier ones would have been going up to
15, 20.
Let's take them back to one of the, something like that has moved, 70, 18 yards.
Yeah.
So it makes it easier to narrow that up, which then means if you've got, if you don't want it looping at the back end, you can hold it without having to then feel like you're hitting a fade. You can just quieten off the draw a little bit.
Definitely.
You don't have to change your path. You can just hold the face slightly longer and reduce it.
Yeah,
so
I think it makes a big difference in crosswinds. If I've got a wind off the right, I've got to really feel like I chop it back into that wind. Otherwise, because if I get it, do a 5-yard draw with a wind off the right, it's moving a long way. So that would really help with that tighter dispersion.
So you should be able to make the same swing, just hold the face, depending on how you like to feel those. But either just hold it up a little bit, rather than have to scythe it, or actually just hit the same shot and hold the face, so it just effectively a block, and let the wind move it, rather than having to make sure you don't get that catapult around. So and so for a golfer of your stand, it's nipping around the edges, but ultimately you've got -4 shots to play with around.
Yes, yeah.
So an overdraw and a miss into a bunker or some hay back left of a green with a downslope, and then you've gone, well, you're now -5. You're still going to make 5 shots back during the round. So,
and as you know, at West Sussex, we, unless it's bone dry, you're hitting a lot of 6, 4, 5 irons into the par 3s there. We've
true.
got 3 par 3s over 200 yards. So you use the top of the bag more than I do anywhere else, really. So good. I really like it. It feels great.
In terms of, this is where in terms of head side of things, blade's a blade. I'll get a couple of other ones.
I'd stick with the Titleist stuff. I've always played it. I just like it.
Some of it's from that standpoint. It's a classic muscle back shape. There's a reason why they've gone to different shapes. We've gone back to like the old, 690s. Just a classic shape because the weight's where you need it behind the contact point, and it's a solid lump of metal as in the P7MB, as in the MP221. So they've got a really very, very clean, slim top line, which you'll be used to over
years. They look very similar, just cleaner than mine.
What I quite like about them as well is with this set, they've got that little bit of beveling on the leading edge. A little bit, just a very, very small amount of it.
Which I haven't got. Mine's dead flat.
So what it gives, I don't know whether that'll show
it might
on here or not, but this edge up a little bit. So that front edge just slightly softened without making it kind of heavy back edge. So very, very tight, sharp leading edge on the 712. But to cater for different, for winter as well, just slightly kill that leading, or kill this angle a little bit. Just means you get a little bit more protection when it's soft as well.
It looks really good. It looks like it's got a little bit more bounce in the middle and compared to that one's, because that's completely flat.
I think that's mainly due to that front edge.
Maybe not then. No, you're right.
Yeah, maybe a little. It's dead flat and almost back a little bit. There is a fraction of camber to it, fraction. But it's not got a high back edge, so it's not going to be trying to hit the skids and stop you getting into the back of them.
Our fairways become hitting off your carpet here. You can't do anything with it.
So the question obviously, we've done it with your current set of having 4-iron, but now the 4-iron loft is pretty strong, so it's down at 21.
Okay.
So 6-iron 29. You can go 25, 21. You can go, it's more about flighting wise and what sort of pitch flight. Would you want to make the same? Sorry, mind and mouth out of sync.
Yeah.
Would you want to do the same thing in the 4-iron of having a head that gives you a little bit more flight? Because the one way of doing that would be,
if I hit a 4-iron blade, I tend to not get a huge difference between that and the 5. I don't know if that's just lack of speed or technique. I just find if I've hit a 4 and 5-iron bladed, I just can't get it up, if that makes sense, and get it flighting.
So I wonder whether in this instance, it's definitely not lack of speed, and it's definitely not lack of being able to find the middle of the face.
Okay.
It may well be that where you're coming in that little bit shallow, as the loft drops down, the spin drops down a bit more. So the way, in principle what you've done here makes a lot of sense, but the way of doing it would be effectively the upback. So something like the CB, there's there's not enough extra weight at the bottom to tangibly change
Change
flight.
it, okay.
It would be, it's a different feel, but it would be the equivalent. I'll grab the T100 just to give you the comparison. To get that centre of gravity down a little bit lower and pick the flight up a touch more. Difference with the T100s, they've worked the groove to try and keep a little bit more flight onto it.
Yeah.
So just to kind of give a comparison on where launch and spin is relative to this, I'll match those up for specs. And particularly, I guess, for where you're using it, say it's long, you're going to be, yeah, it's a 220-yard club, isn't it? So it's par 5, very long par 5.
Yeah,
there's actually the one down the hill over the water.
Yeah, it's a par.
Isn't really a 4-iron.
Yeah, it can be a driver if it's into the wind, that one. No, and I use a lot of 4-irons off the tees, just into sort of shorter par 4s and stuff like that. Because I don't like seeing stuff jump up in the air. If I'm playing something positionally, I will always try and hit it as low as possible.
Because I wonder whether the 5-iron to 4-iron distance thing is whether as much about maintaining, because if the 6-iron can get down to 4.5, 4-iron spin's going to go down to more like, could get down to low 3s. It's whether it's just keeping a little bit more spin to keep it in the air a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It's about the only thing I can think of.
I do feel that when I start getting to the 4-iron, that shaft does feel a little soft in a 4-iron.
Right.
I don't know if that's maybe the head weight's a bit heavier or not, or it just definitely feels like I can get it kicking. Hence, I don't hit it very hard. I'll never hit a full 4-iron, ever.
That's probably why it goes 5-iron.
Probably.
It'll play into, but again, part of having the confidence to go after. And I guess if anything's going to get out of sync and a little bit kind of catapulted, the longer the club gets, if it errs a little heavy, the more likely that is to happen. That separation as you fire, you've got a longer lever that's hanging behind you a little bit more, that's more likely to create that slightly kind of late through the ball, and therefore, is it going to be as comfortable to are you going to be able to maintain the speed and the control on the face? So it's probably where
it ends up being a safety, steery sort of shot. Yeah, definitely.
So you're losing that progression. Chances are you're losing a bit of the progression in speed into that club as well, because you know it's not going to go right. So you're not going to hit full bore at it.
No, definitely not.
And then part of that feeling of a little bit of kind of the floppiness you mentioned earlier is that anything you do with the swim that does that, you're going to exaggerate that tendency to feel a bit of kick out the shaft.
Yeah.
All of which just degrades a bit of confidence. So let's see from a head profile point of view how much difference in launch spin.
Very slappy, that one.
Might require, because of the tungsten in it, it might require slightly different swing weight to get it feeling the same to move.
Keep slapping.
Just make it a little bit more. Because the centre of gravity moves out that way a bit more, swing weight sometimes doesn't correlate to a solid lump of metal. So we've seen it with drivers.
Have you?
Okay. Because or initially with drivers where they're going lighter faces, lighter crowns, lighter soles, more weight back. That, for example, something like the Epic Max, you'd need to swing weight slightly heavier because of a deep back weighting than a TSI 3 to feel the same.
So that's how my 2-iron reacts, those two swings.
Okay.
Definitely don't enjoy it as much as the
Won't feel as solid.
No, it doesn't. It feels...
Yeah. There's not a great difference in launch profile. Yeah, actually, that one with the square face, that one had a little bit more launch. It's not a massive change in spin, and certainly I think that once we got the extra weight in the head was closer, it's 16, 17 and a half.
So I said I've always felt like I strike blades better than other irons. I don't know.
I think some of it is, you said the mass is on the back of the ball.
Okay.
So having it a bit higher up where you've got a bit of shaft lean, it's on the ball rather than needing to scoop underneath to get it airborne.
Because I didn't hit one of the MBs at the top of the face and hit 2 there high.
And I think that's where you're probably hitting a similar part of the face, but the CG is a bit lower.
So it feels...
So it feels higher on the face. Which is less of an issue with a forearm because there's less loft on it.
Yeah.
And then you're wanting it a little bit lower in the head. It's about a half a degree higher launch. It's not vast. Yeah, 16.6 to 17.1.
We could look at maybe going...
Spin-wise, no real difference. It's whether you gain, you'd gain a little bit of forgiveness. And certainly if any of the tightest heads, that would be the one that if you're going to see a difference, I mean, 100S, but that would let me put the 100S on just as a comparison. Because there's, what you get with that is a little bit of face tech on it. That certainly in terms of making sure you maintain ball speed and that distance progression.
Yeah, just thinking maybe...
May just come off the face a little better.
Maybe just recompose the top end of the bag, play a bladed 4-iron, and then maybe play like a, whatever the U500 3-iron, let's say, instead of a 2-iron.
Well, you can still get, I mean, your 2 irons at strong 1-iron loft.
Yes, hence I can't hit it, yeah.
So, there's some unfortunate rabbits on the course. But that's, from a gapping point of view, that will, you go from 26 on the 5-iron, 21 on the 4-iron, 15 3/4 on the 2-iron. So, actually, if we get that lighter weight, getting swinging better, getting striking better, get the 4-iron performance where it, timing-wise where it should be, that's going to make it perform a little better from a consistency standpoint. And then, you could still take the 4-iron to 22 and the 2/3 at 18. Keep a 3.5, 4 degree gap going.
I thought the 2-iron was at like 17, 18.
So that's the 100S. Which is sort of it's got a little bit of face text. It's a bit of a stepping stone, slightly, it's very, very slightly heavier. Sort of stepping stone towards something like that driving iron. So the one thing here is ball speed's good. So ball speed efficiency, that's smash good. But the spin's a bit low, and this is at the same loft, so it's just dragged 300 or 400 revs of spin off.
Okay.
Which, now granted, you can use loft to control that. So we could, it doesn't, the loft gaps don't have to be equal, they've just got to create the distances and the flights you want them to be at. That will give you a bit more ball speed because they're using a little bit of the sort of cavity behind the face, create a bit of speed. Would then give you a bit more forgiveness versus 4-iron in a blade, because that's not hard.
It might be one of those
if you wanted a stepping stone, then that would look the more likely one to do it, but it might be a case of having it at a 23 degree loft than a 22.
Yeah.
So
you could always try originally start with the 4-iron one and see how you get on, can't you?
I mean, as a club that you're not using a huge amount, BQ speaking is also, I play blade through 5-iron, I go to a head that's got a bit of speed to bridge up to 2-iron, but it's not a club I'm using very much.
No.
So it's the odd par 5, wintertime long par 4s where there's no run, or the odd long par 3, and there's not an awful lot of other usage for it. So if that shaft made it feel that much more playable, then is there a problem putting the blade in the 4-iron? It's as much concept as it is.
Yeah, no, and I don't tend to misstrike my 5-iron. So I know it's a little, it's another club on, but I never worry about misstrikes. My missus is shape, not normally striking.
So potentially, if you're not enjoying the feel of hitting it as much, are we adding a layer in that we don't need to?
I think
always trying to overprotect the 4-iron.
Yeah, and it might not need it. Yeah, I think so.
Because the blade will create some spin. That's the irony. The more you use the face, the more tech you put in. The lower you put the centre of gravity, the less it spins. So we've not seen a spin gain from either of these over the blade.
And I do find that there's a lot of times, you know, some of our par fours are like 460. You can end up into the wind hitting 4 irons in, and I would much rather hit a bladed 4 iron, a half one, just to bring the flight down, bring the launch down, feels like it's more controllable than something that automatically looks like it's going to try and jump.
Okay.
So I think I'd probably start with that and then see how you get
If
on.
there's a requirement, but
See if I can find
I
a
think
face.
the shaft change will be enough.
I think
it's
so.
not something I'll be thinking, do we need to do this?
No.
And interesting stuff is particularly, I mean, say I found that with the other head there. I kind of that one worked better. If you were looking at sort of supercharging the top end of the iron set, but I don't think we are.
No, not at all.
If we get representative distances, you're still going to be hitting your 4 iron 215, 220 through the air. So I think keep those all the way through. And then look at getting a 2 iron.
Definitely, then get the 2 iron
loft and working it better.
Definitely, I agree with you. Cool.
Cool. All right.
I like it.
Afternoon. So
It doesn't look like a lot of loft, that 2 iron.
it's one of those ones. Once you know, you can't. It kind of looks it, doesn't it? Let's see. I'm just going to make sure. I'm sure it is. I'm just going to make sure I haven't Yeah, I don't think I have.
No, I don't think you have.
Mismeasured it, just to double check.
Which is probably why I enjoy teeing it up and hitting up on it.
Right. Yeah.
Treating it like a mini driver.
So you'll get the loft. You'll get the launch through.
Well, if I'd make some,
if
I make some of those sort of like half punchy swings with it, it just doesn't come out with any spin. It just slaps.
Just so low. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's turn that. And actually, I mean, one of the interesting things, I mean, looking at the, do you want off a low tee?
No, that'd be fine.
I mean, if you look at the bag of, I think it was Adam Scott at the moment, was it Scott or Moronk or one of those? I'm pretty sure it was Scott. There's, he's actually got one of the older model TMBs.
Okay.
So it's not one of the latest heads. And possibly, so where that head possibly versus something like the T200, which would be the equivalent of it now, ironically might retain a better spin profile. I mean, we won't want it too low. So it might feel a bit more hollow because, again, they've got more tungsten in the sole, lower CG. But again, what that does is takes that bit of spin off. And actually, we might not need to take that spin off.
I don't think you do with this, no. This, if I strike it, it does go. Yeah. I just want something that's a little securer. 250.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, 2.6 on spin.
Yeah, it just doesn't spin enough.
And that's one that stayed right as well.
Yeah. And it felt like a okay swing. Didn't feel terrible.
Yeah, what's interesting there is if there's not enough in the bottom, the momentum won't take you through the shot.
Yeah.
So it ends up kind of there and that bit of a steer out. So that's the first one that has inadvertently started right, gone right.
Yeah, and then you react to that on the next tee and put it in those trees.
Yeah.
See, that's the slappy one.
And that's the one where it's just going on you halfway down. So let me just weight it up in the head, just to kind of dot I's and cross T's and cover off that setup.
Because the first one felt like a nice swing. If you said to me, where has that gone, I would have said down the middle. But
hit it well.
Yeah,
it's gone 275.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good ball speed. But it's with that spin where it is, that would be a great driver replacement if you just couldn't hit woods.
Yeah.
But the problem then is, okay, we're not looking for a brutally high flight. I'm looking for another 20% of spin on. But that's on one that, so you square that up, that spin's coming down even more.
Yeah.
So.
Could we put the loft to 18 and see how it reacts?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Just now you know.
Well, and that was 3 up on it as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll just bend that loft back up.
Yeah, and I like to occasionally hit down on hit a little punchy one with a 2 iron. If you do that, it's going to the heather in front of you, isn't it?
Yeah, you're not getting a lot of carry on.
No.
It. Yeah. Turning it down to 6 degrees of loft.
Yeah.
There are times that I think that flight, so you go back to Royal St George's on the 3rd hole, could have been quite useful.
Yeah. I'd like to hit that flight though, but with more spin on it, if that makes sense. So it's still low and flighted, but actually carrying a little.
Yeah, so you get the launch angle down there by squeezing it and launching it a bit low, but then it retains a bit of spin rather than just a straight knuckle.
Yeah.
Right, so that's at 18. I've got a little bit more weight on the head with that as well.
Oh wow, yeah, you can feel it.
Great. Cool, thanks. Yeah, just logging with change of loft.
Yeah, a little necky, but it's much better. Feels much better.
Okay, and then 3-3 on spin.
Yeah.
So just picked up the 600-700 revs.
See, that was a slappy one, but I feel like it's still going to carry.
Yeah, still got 3,000 on it.
Yeah.
It's a little hard. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get one with a steel shaft in. Okay, it still looks to me like it's got a little bit almost like an under release through a little bit of a flick.
Okay.
So I just want to go to something that's more towards where we are with the irons.
Yeah. What spin are you looking for on it, Simon? What would be ideal?
Low 3,000s.
Okay.
I think, yeah. It's, I mean, that one's got a little bit of shot shape. I mean, actually, the previous one's probably the more, so that slight fade on it, but kind of where that's hit up on a little bit as well. 14.5's not overly high.
Yeah.
But it gives you the option to bring it down to 11, 12
Yeah.
if you wanted to, rather than.
Yeah, and I'd probably tee it off something slightly lower than that with a wooden tee.
Just a weight. Do I use? Let me just get one over here that's lightish. Just want to use one I don't have to throw a load of weight onto. See if this comes out too heavy or not. Slightly too much. Thought that one might be a bit heavy.
So you haven't built a different head weights then, do you?
Just with a slightly different loft.
Okay.
Some of them, slightly different length hosels as well. They come out just marginally different weights. I mean, I can easily get that first on the Mizuno there. Easier. It just requires quite a bit of weight. So it'd be nice not to have to take it in lead tape. Okay, just a couple of the driving iron heads, or sort of hybrid iron heads, have become that's closer. Have become quite heavy.
Okay.
Which, for a couple of them, is actually a bit of a shame, because the performance-wise very good, but then you've got to build them relatively short, but they're just sturdy.
I find having a 2-iron in the bag outside of the summer is essential in the courses that we play. You need something you can fly.
Yeah, and I think it's. I mean, in summer, if we can get it as a really reliable. Plonkered in. I mean, and saying part of the problem for you in summer with that one where it was in loft is just not stopping.
No. And I just wasn't striking it enough. I would strike 1 in 5 rather than with my driver. I strike a lot more. Yeah. So it made sense to just hit driver.
Yeah.
This feels nice. That's a lot better.
Yeah, so we're up. Yeah. So straight we're back into that bit of a draw. So
Yeah.
shaft length is not identical, maybe just a 1/4 inch difference, but we're a 115 gram at the moment. So it's still a little lighter than the 2-iron shaft. Same series, so the KBS shaft, and they are things like the C-taper are very tip heavy, but the Tour series, any of the Tour series are very, very similar balance profile. But this one, just it's a little bit lighter than where we are with the irons. And when you get to this one, it's whether that just slightly lighter weight helps just to clear through it a little more cleanly. That was hit. I was going to say, yeah, that was hit.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, I wonder whether if we used the same shaft, whether it just forces a little bit of a heave. I think we're fine in 4-iron, but this is going to go 3/4 of an inch or so longer and a little bit more of a clear through. Just that slight drop in weight.
Yeah, it doesn't feel massively different from there. I guess because it's a lot longer club. So put some speed in it. It feels 100 times better than what I've been using.
Yeah, so just hold the flight there.
Yeah.
You say launches a little bit lower. Partly that little weight helps just to stay on top a little bit as well.
Let me take it onto the ground because that's slightly higher than I would normally tee it.
Yeah. And so these are also total between around the 260 mark.
Yeah.
So pitching 245.
A little clean, but it feels more of a fairway finder.
Commercial, yeah. And I think that's what it just, the going away from the steel for you, there's just not enough to hit against, so it becomes a little bit, as you say, a bit like that sort of flappy, slappy kind of thing, where there's not the guts there that can keep, having a bit of weight there allows you to use the weight, go a little light and you end up flailing at it and then it's a steer, rather than, I can, like particularly with this, you might want to kind of sting one in there, stay on top of it, drive it.
That's what I'm going to try and do now, yeah.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, if you meant to do that, that's great.
Yeah, that's what, just a little
good
stinger
friend of
one.
mine often says.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's so much more stable in terms of that timing through the ball. But it's a good, just over 10-15% shaft weight. It's not an insignificant change.
So, hit another one of those. Little slappy, but it's worked.
Not getting you in trouble.
No.
Yeah. So that's just as you pitched your angle forward, just the really you've got slightly more ahead of it, so it's just held it right a little bit.
And I do feel like you said at the beginning, I do feel like lost between golf swings. We go from this that feels right to having to react. Hit one more of those little flighted ones.
So that was hit. Yeah, it's a much straighter shot type.
Yeah, I just want to be able to chip it, sort of carrying that sort of distance.
Yeah. So chip it. Yeah. Sort of in Tony Finau's Chip It kind of book. But yeah, what it's done is just that little bit of leverage has just meant it's the same feel.
Yeah.
Losing a little bit of weight, yes, I think is a good thing into the 2-iron, but it's not the 25 grams. It's 7 to 10.
It feels wonderful. Can I see if I can just flight one a bit?
Of course, yeah.
Because this is when I can tend to lose it left. Fat.
That's cool. Yeah, that's just where it's bottomed out a little more behind, but it's not flipped.
No, and I probably wouldn't try and hit a lot of high 2-irons off a deck, but you just see if I can get that launch up a bit, if I need to. Yeah.
Yeah,
I really like it.
The deck, 13, 14 launch, a little bit of draw.
Yeah.
Would you want, I say that one, we can get that same weight, but feeling a little tighter? Or because that is likely to have a little bit more kick.
We could maybe play it a quarter of an inch longer than tip it if we needed to start with, or not.
That wouldn't make, yeah, that
wouldn't do anything.
Because I mean, that one's just so essentially you're into the Tour V series. That one's the Tour in a 115 weight.
Yeah.
The Tour V in the same weight will play a little bit stiffer.
I would go
So
by
we'll
what you
just
think.
tighten up the feel. I would probably tighten up the feel of it.
Okay, just a little bit.
Because that shows us what the weight needs to be.
Yeah. See how it feels on this shot.
The other aspect of it is if you've hit it that way and it feels that way, you know, do we need to mess around with it? It's a feel.
I like hitting that shot, you know, just a little, if you've got a little tight hole, chipping it off there in the summer.
Yeah,
I don't know. Hard, isn't it?
It works. So
yeah,
it would only be if that felt a little on the soft side, whether you'd want it to feel a little tighter all the way through.
Let's hit it a bit harder and see what happens. No, I don't need it any. I don't need it any tighter.
The reality of it is that the flex on its own won't really change anything. It's certainly not going to change the left-right dispersion, and that's in a great flight window as well. So
yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah,
because this definitely isn't wrong. It could maybe feel not as nice.
So you could quite feasibly use that head.
Yeah, that's what I'd probably do. Yeah. Just with some loft on it.
Yeah, you'll have it at 18. Yeah.
This is the club that I've been looking for though. That's got a bit more control.
Yeah.
It should be hitting 2 iron to hit a fairway. I definitely wouldn't be doing that.
Right. Yeah. Because that's certainly for me. I know my 2 irons are real confidence go-to.
Yeah.
I just know that it's not going offline.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. That's really nice.
Cool.
And it feels light enough that you can put enough speed into it.
Yeah. And so it's just about just under 10 grams lighter. Okay. So it's enough to make a difference without it being, let's say, the 25 that you've got there.
Yeah. Well, I would say I've hit maybe 10 balls with that and haven't hit any terrible strikes. I would hit 3 out of 5 terrible strikes with my 2 iron. You might still end up in play, but they're not good golf shots.
Yeah, and then all it does is it erodes the confidence in it, because if you can find the middle with everything else, you kind of like, well, I know it goes okay, but I just, so if you're anything like me, if I'm striking it well, I feel like I can work with it.
Yeah,
if I'm feeling like I'm feeling for strike, then I feel like I'm behind the 8 ball straight away. And then
100%.
you're just like, kind of, well, I don't know what I'm doing here. It ends up being just a guess.
Well, the prime example would be the 4th hole at Sunningdale Old, where you've got the 2 bunkers on the right-hand side.
Yep.
I was hitting driver in the gap, because I would rather hit driver in that smaller gap.
The 5th with the
It's a 5th
water.
downhill, yeah. I would try and hit a little low-cut driver into that smaller gap than 2 iron into the bigger one. Which is not a good sign of a good 2 iron.
Well, yeah, it's sort of counterintuitive.
So yes, it's not really.
Yeah. And that's the thing, if you've got that much confidence with the driver, yeah, it's absolutely harder to hit than 2 iron, or you certainly shouldn't feel like you can hit a tighter dispersion with it. So grand. Wedges will do back end. That's a simple one.
3 wood, I didn't bring my head.
Water or
water would be good actually, if that's right.
I'll grab that for you.
Thank you. Yes, I say I did buy a 5 wood head just to give it a go, but never ended up buying a shaft for it. Because, as I say, I was struggling with the 2 iron. I was like, maybe I should hit a 5 wood. I'm just not sure it's got a place in my bag really. In the UK, probably not.
I think you're right. I think if we were in Arizona, 5 would great. You know, so many of those sort of courses where, or if you're playing, I mean, even something like West Course, Wentworth, possibly.
Yes.
And part of it's because of the distance you hit it, and the UK courses. How often are you going to be wanting to hit it 260, 265? There, landing,
not
sticking.
very often.
It's not presented with those shots very often.
No.
You know, it's more going to be, you know, if you've got a par 5 and you've got your driveway, it's going to be a 4 iron, 5 iron.
Yes.
And even then, are you going to want to hoist one up?
If
you're on a links course, the last thing you want is a a 5-wood spin and feel, and the winters are battered around, you're much more like, you can play with the ball running into the green 90% of the time over here. So whereas you go and play TPC Scottsdale or something like that, you've got, or East Lake or one of those, you've got bunkers in front of greens. It's soft conditions, it's through the air yardage, and that's when the 5-wood then becomes, off a tee, you're playing it just to throw a dart.
Yeah.
It's just an unplugged stop. So it's not a club that here we're presented with the need to use at your length that much.
No, I agree. I barely use 3-wood, if I'm honest with you, because again, I would much rather tee a driver down.
You look at where 2-iron's getting you to, that's then a lot of trouble either sits at 240, 250. Or now we're starting to see, I want to use my own course at St George's Hill as an example. There are a couple of bunkers in at 260, 270. And for you, that's easily air mailable with a driver, so they don't exist if it's a driver hole. You're then left with a choice where do you kind of maybe take a little bit off or kind of soften the flight on the 2-iron when it's not running like a gun to not reach it. Or are you able to play just to the side of it? And so that's where most good golfers' drivers are getting to 270 odds. So that's where most courses here are really, from a 6.5 to 6.8 this length course. That's most of the troubles for that length of shot, not for 320 where your driver will be. So it's, and then even 3-wood. So the exaggeration is Matt we got here. He's like 140 club speed, as you know. He's looking at 3-wood at 310.
Wow.
310, 315. You go, well, apart from the odd short par 4 where I'm laying up and he's going at the green. Like, well, where
are
else
you hitting
do you
that?
use it?
We haven't got 8,000 yard golf courses.
It becomes a bit of that sort of, well, what job role is it for the days where which are rare for you with your driver, where you're not filling it with the driver, you're not losing too much distance. It's rarely ever a fairway club.
Should we have a look at the driver first then and see
we'll
what
get
gap
driver
maybe you want to
at
be
the
in
top
there?
end, but it's then what shot are we? What job role are we trying to fill? Maybe that 0-iron loft is.
As I say, times I will use 3-wood is in the summer to drive shorter par 4s that drivers may be too long for potentially.
So tee up, if you're anti-clockwise, just to take it up a little bit, and clockwise to go in.
Oh, okay. That's good, isn't it? Okay.
Means hopefully I shouldn't get one flying back at me.
Right, yeah.
Again, certainly from a setup point of view, this shaft is not overly heavy, balance is pretty neutral, structurally very stable. There's an awful lot that makes sense about it.
It's the best driver I've owned. Like, I feel like I can shape it both ways. Yeah, it feels nice.
I mean, that one faced the target dead square, just path a little into out. Flight-wise, really good trajectory on that.
Just aim a little left.
A little bit, but. Just slightly over to you. Is that a little high on the face?
Yeah, that one was definitely, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. Let me know if you want to tee down a little bit.
Yeah, I might go down a little bit. Let me hit a couple more. Let me hit one more. Let me hit one more. Yeah.
It's just overdrawing a fraction. Path, angle attack path, great. Contact's great.
Just pulling it, am I?
Just, face just over closing a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, path-wise, first one's 4 into out, the last two have been 0.0, 0.6. Yeah, so that one's only, in terms of shape, looking at, I was saying 20 yards, that might be a little bit exaggerated, but it's only like 1.5 face to path. Again, just a little bit up on the, slightly above centre on the strike.
Yes, it was up,
So
it was up there.
Spins that a little bit lower.
Let me just, did you say?
Yeah, just
I'll
take
let
it
you
down
do
a
it.
fraction. Yeah, I'll just bring that down just a little bit. Because if it's a bit higher, you might find yourself going.
Yeah, I
up
never
a
tee
little
the
bit
ball
to
up.
the-
Yeah.
Yeah, that looked better.
Not made a great swing on this yet.
Interesting. So looked a good move through, just It's just towing in a fraction.
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't look like it's flipping.
No.
Yeah, it's like a fraction. It's just a little bit
All
close.
going there, yeah.
Yeah, let me just look at one thing on that. Setting wise, we're B1 a little flatter. Let's just see. Yes, it's not heavy swing weight, 2.3.
I don't feel like I've struck any of that. Struck any of those really.
A little. Let's see. I wonder whether I'll take that apart. Just test. I'm just going to see if I take just a. Will that work into that? That's the new one. That won't fit. I'm just going to see if I've got a very slightly less heavy weight, just to see if taking a little bit out stops it just catapulting a little. So everything about the club makes sense in terms of your head style isn't, you're not a spinny player, so head style isn't overly low spin, but the slightly more compact head will help. I'm sure visually more comfortable look. The launch angle, the flight looks in a nice window. Good strike. The trajectory is great. It's just whether there's anything from a balance point of view that's getting it a little bit, just shutting down a little bit of impact. It's not like you can see where you're trying to work the fade a little bit. Path's gone a bit out to in. That's just you kind of looking to control the face on it. It's minute. So everything structurally about it makes a lot of sense. But I'm just going to check.
Just going to hit one more just to try and warm up a bit.
I was going to say that one looked squarer face to par.
I think it was maybe my alignment.
Possibly is going off the tee in the mark.
Yeah.
I mean, that one, so almost ignoring the path for a minute, looking at shape, and that one's then back to, at your distance, 10, 11 yards is not too base with nothing.
Yeah.
But what's great about it, if I optimise it, we're not carrying total, it's saying there's a couple of miles an hour ball speed, but from a like upper mid launch, lower mid speed, it's such an optimal trajectory.
Have you got the shot just before that one? Yeah. That one hit slightly nicer.
Okay, yeah. So if I put it on total, there's 1 mile an hour ball speed range, but again, that trajectory spin's very, very stable. And at your speed, you don't want the spin's more important than the launch.
Yes.
You're going to it's going to stay in the air long enough. Even if it launched at 9 degrees, it's going to stay in the air long enough. And that's what we call it's more of a boring flight, a kind of going, strong total distance oriented ball flight.
For me, in the UK, if you're doing anything over 2.5 in a puff of wind, it's coming back at you.
Another inch from the other bay. And again, you're also hitting driver to get distance. If you're not hitting it to try and sort of soften a flight in or kind of feed it in. That's maybe where 3-wood wise for you. Maybe that's what that then becomes. Next one between 2-iron and driver becomes a club to have a little bit of spin, have it landing a little bit softer.
Definitely, yeah. I've always thought, maybe would I be better off looking at like a 4-forward or something like that? Maybe, I don't know. And then I sometimes get the launch going.
Possibly. I think it's really dependent on more where the spin is.
Okay.
Shall I leave centre first. Let's just see if we take a swing weight point or so off just a little bit. Does that make it easier? Does that make any difference? Okay, let's see what a little bit less head weight does.
Yeah, I found I hit a few better ones, sort of lining myself up a bit, a little better. That felt better.
I mean, it may well be that it's just where, there's still a little tendency there, it may just be where we've been slightly lighter on the irons that where the weight was. It may just be a case of also just having a little fiddle around and see as if we change the iron setup, does that then just fractionally change where the balance needs to be on that to feel like it sinks in? Mm-hmm. Again, delivery line, path 0.0, I mean, that's really, really good.
Let me just aim a bit further down the right.
See, I think that's almost where by making yourself aim right it, just so face to target stayed very, very square, but the path went so. Okay, so it's not quite as. Let me shift that out of the toe a little bit. Because it doesn't. Whereas with the irons, it looked like there was that little bit of fetch and catch up to it. It doesn't look like that with the driver.
Okay. So that for me is the best club in the bag. I hit it.
See whether that changes anything at all. Let's put it a bit more into the toe side. Yeah, I mean, strike point staying very, very, very centred, so it's not.
That felt better.
Still think that's turning a little bit. Okay. I mean, great contact, ball speed, 176. Just want to see one thing at setup. Just want to check one thing to see whether what it might look like back there looks. Okay, so I just wonder whether the ball's a hair far forward.
Okay.
Because it just looked like the face was just
it's catching
slightly
it that way.
toed in. So where you're on line, I think the face it was. So in terms of visual, it was almost just right on the outside of your foot. So it's then beyond your left shoulder, which then means it's just got a bit more time to turn in. Because delivery line's very, very neutral. It's just the face is a touch closed.
Touch close, so it's sort of hitting it later on the arc.
To the ball, Let me just put the original weight back in. Put the original weight back in. I think it's better to go back to that original weight and then do that. It's also one of those where when it's a club you get on with and everything about the setup makes sense.
Yeah.
I really want to mess around with it.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah, I say it might not look like it is, but I hit a lot of fairways with this club.
I say the timing, the connection looks good. It was just kind of looking at, was there anything you could see that would get the face just a little bit turned in at impact? Yeah, so that weight on, then that's definitely then, more neutral.
Hit one more.
I think just a little bit of just crept a hair forward.
Yeah.
So that by the time the club gets to impact, the face has just had a bit, with the arc, the face has just come round a little bit too far.
Yeah.
A little bit.
One more.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think my gut feel is to say let's flight's exactly where we want it to be.
Yeah.
And if it's a club that's been working very well, I can't see anything that's
creating that shape. Yeah.
It's so potentially just it being, I'm going to exaggerate, kind of out there.
Yeah.
Just getting it back a little bit, and then that's the only thing I can see.
Where's it saying strike is? Does it?
Very, very central. So look at the. Oh, helps to put it on the right.
Okay.
So central, just above. So it's not like it's toe.
It
and
might
going
be
that
I'm
way.
used to teeing up down the right and playing a big draw.
Possibly,
And then
yeah.
if I tee up on a right-hand side, I'd tee it really low and really work it.
Okay.
So I would probably
Yeah.
never tee on the right side of a golf
Got it.
hole and try
Yeah.
and hit it straight.
Got it. So
Does that make
If
sense?
the tee markers are misaligned.
Oh,
to the hole,
definitely,
it
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
changes the visuals. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Certainly.
I think that's me rather than the club.
I think in terms of because of where that swing line is,
Yeah.
it's because relative to where our irons are, you're a little bit further over, and there's a tendency to want to bring it back into the middle of the screen.
Yeah, yeah.
I would be more inclined to say there's that because the tolerances are very, very small,
Yes.
and say everything else is where I want it to be. And if you've not got, and also if you're more of that start at right draw, if you've not got a foam padded wall just to your right,
yeah.
that's more than likely just going to take you back into there. So if it's not a shot that you've seen out of this club out on the course,
I'm a tee it down this side and go that way on it.
Yeah.
Or if I need to hit the fairway, do what I do with my irons, go down this side and really tee it, sort of.
So I think I'm inclined to say I think that's just a reaction to, say, not being able to really start it as right, maybe as far right as you'd be comfortable with.
Oh, definitely,
and
yeah.
Just then, instead of starting right side and coming back in, it's
just sort of pulling it and then
starting straight and drawing over. So something like that one. Face to pass only 3 degrees, but if you're able to start it right
There.
edge of the fairway, then you're back to centre, left, centre. So
Yeah.
if it was left and then the spoon right and then left and the spoon right, then I'd worry a little bit more.
Yeah.
Based on where the contact is, strength of flight, cleanliness of timing through the shot, I'm inclined to say let's
Leave that, yeah.
Let's not mess around with a club that's working really,
Yeah,
really well.
I agree.
And makes sense why it's working really well. I can't see that being, and so especially taking that into account where you almost can't set yourself to the left of the tee here and aim it up the right.
Yeah.
I think that's more a visual thing of where you'd almost rather orient yourself relative to the tee
If
shot.
I was hitting
So very
driver
consistent.
on this hole, I would be over here.
Yeah. So
it's just me, just that's where.
It's not like we can see it
No.
snapping around, or like the 2-arm because he just lost it on the way down. It looks like you can just keep going with it. And the ones that I watch are really nice hits. You can see it's very, very cleanly connected. You just see, right, is it just the face relative to setup being a little closed? But if your setup's normally right edge of the hole, then that then brings it back to the left centre of the
if
fairway.
I'm playing this golf hole, those 2 trees, that right edge of that bunker is where I'm aiming.
Yeah.
If I'm hitting a full
Which
one.
then, rather than dead down there, that pulls that back to
Sort of here,
left edge of
which
the
would be
green.
my shot,
So I think let's not try to find fault in something.
No,
that's working
agree.
well.
I agree.
Okay,
It'd take a lot of convincing to get out of that.
well, and based on the consistency of if you look at the averages there, you're a 170 plus on the ball speed out of it. The flight's great. If I optimise the flight side of it, then and this is the average.
Yeah.
What we can see there is there are a couple where they're a little bit less ball speed, but the trajectory is absolutely spot on. And when you get the strike there, the ball speed's right up. So
where it is,
and the strongest ones are up at 320. So it's in a good place. I think it's purely the
Start lines.
The start lines, and feeling like you can set up where you want to. And
because in my studio, I'm much more here with my setup.
Got it.
So I'm used to that way on it.
Yeah. Makes total sense. So I think this then comes down to being we want it to be a 290 odd yard shot, 285, 290 yard shot.
Okay.
But we want to get that spin rate back up towards the 3,000.
3,000s, yeah.
I mean, TSI 3 is not as low spin as TSR 3.
Okay.
So the head will retain a little bit more. So instead, the 3 you've got.
The 3 I've got, yeah.
I'll use...
Because I tried the TS2 and it just jumps.
Yeah, that one's a noticeably higher
jumps,
flight.
yeah.
I'll get TSR 3 as a head to start with. And you've got that in the 15 degree?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Would you want to match the feel of the driver setup as much as possible? Or I guess we're going back to like the 2-iron thing, is it just want something you can rely on?
Yeah, whatever hits the fairway, yeah. Because it's, as I say, I feel comfortable hitting driver a lot. It needs to give me a reason not to hit driver, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's go.
That's what I had in it.
Okay, so okay, yeah.
That was just a guess.
Well, yeah. I'll start with. I'll pop that in this one because it's still relevant. Relevant start point.
I played it, I think, flat, just so it didn't
B1?
go left. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Standard left.
Yeah.
I guess they haven't made massive tweaks between.
There's a reasonable difference. Yeah.
They're awesome clubs.
It's so. I mean, the TSI series were very good.
Yeah.
And so TSR, I would expect to find it being lower spin than TSI. Okay. Well, not expect. I mean, certainly all of our testing has been lower spin. Why is it not coming up?
TSI spins less than TSR. Okay.
Yeah. So even in the two, that should come out. Why is that not coming out? No wonder that's so heavy. That's a heavier weight. Sorry, mind and mouth out of sync.
That's okay.
Doesn't take much. So like in TSR2, where the TSI we used a lot to get that bit of extra flight. If you've got a lower launch or a lower spin play, they're great to pick the flight up a little bit. Still launches okay, but it's noticeably a bit lower spin than TSI was. So let's see that as a start point. And the R, it tends to be, if you're somebody who traps it, certainly our initial thoughts, if you're somebody who kind of squeezed it and trapped it quite a bit, kept the spin in check, but gave a kind of driven flight.
They've definitely gone back to the old Titleist style of heads, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's like a.
It's whether TSR is potentially a bit too low spin.
Okay.
In the 3-wood, but the eye will retain some spin. Okay, so that one's getting a little behind you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just.
I like the look of the head though. It's really nice.
Okay, and first things first, I'll get a little bit of weight out the head. Yeah, it's a proper classic Titleist shape.
Yeah, it's a really. Is it the 907? Is that the one it looks like? 907, I think it is. Yeah, I think it's the 9.
And I think the last couple of series they've done a very good job with.
Yeah.
The back to used to almost have to take a slight disadvantage to play a Titleist head, whether it was ball speed or spin. And actually, this time around they've got rid of any of that
for years, and then I think when we got to sort of 915 and that sort of range, the TaylorMade drivers were so much quicker.
Yeah.
They just were quicker. It was a no-brainer. And they didn't spin as much as I was ended up playing a Titleist driver. I'd have like 7 degrees of loft on it to take the spin off it. Yeah,
and that's the thing, they were designed around control by retaining a little bit of spin, but the problem there is you just gave up distance.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, let's face it, drivers about hitting it a long way.
Yeah.
So,
especially if you're getting paid to do it. So this is just a little lighter,
just taking a bit of head weight out, yeah.
Yeah, it feels better.
Okay, better straight away.
A little low on the strike. Yeah, it feels okay. Wow, I feel like I've done that.
Change that up a little. I'm going to change the shaft a little bit. It's not far off, but
it feels softer than everything else I use.
That again is where you've got that little bit of left-right, which we didn't get with the driver, was just a shot pattern. So One of the ones I'm going to go to is actually the TR version, which has got a little bit of stiffer butt section.
Okay.
And as a result makes it, with the materials I've got, makes it a little bit more even weighted.
Okay.
It's not overly tip heavy, but just evens that balance out a little bit more. But it'll certainly feel a little tighter.
Yeah, it does. It does feel a little soft, that shaft.
Yeah, the blue's quite a responsive feel, especially when relative to, it's not a weak shaft, but it's definitely got a little more kick to it relative to certainly the black. So a bit nice to switch that weight back around. Okay, let's see how that.
Definitely feels a bit tighter.
I mean, it's got a little bit interesting seeing where that spin's gone to as well, because there are a couple with the other one where the spin was certainly higher than I expected it to be with that head.
Yeah. I don't feel like I can put any speed into that shaft.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like I can only.
Okay. Sounded stronger hit. So that's just path a little bit. Right, so face to path is only half a degree difference than path. Flight's in a much better place, actually, in terms of strength, but that's just a little bit, that's just slightly too much there.
I've never been a great 3-wood player. Just never. I think I get lost between hitting up and down on it and moving the path.
I think you squeezing it a little is not a bad way, 'cause 4 degrees up, it's got that much loft on it that it just starts to then create that little bit more, swing direction goes a little too much right. So it's almost like if you kind of think how Fitzpatrick hits it, he gets that slightly trappy, squeezy. That's actually not a bad feel for you, I think. Yeah, so immediately squared off. You see, I could teach.
I know, yeah.
Got that level, squared that off. Interesting when you see where the spin's gone with that head.
Yeah.
That's where I think TSI will help not, because that's then down at driver spin. That's not what we're looking for.
No.
TSI will help to retain a little bit of that spin back again, but far, far better. Because you call it less that way, the face doesn't go or sort of top speed that way. It kind of helps to level, square everything off and leave the face.
Yeah, just hit down on it and left a bit more.
Feel-wise, yeah. Much more like you would your 2-iron. Yeah. Looks nice, yeah. So but much, much straighter. Okay, so that one's a little bit better. Let's just see contact point on those last two, because previous one was a little bit higher up the face. That one retained a little bit more spin.
Yeah, speed's jumped up hitting it that way, isn't it?
Yeah, so you can see ball speed wise. Okay, got a couple of them, but it's just got that in and up and loop around. So you can do that with driver.
I find I end up getting more that way when I get softer shafts, because I feel if I trap it, I just gets stuck behind me. Like the head gets, The shaft was wonderful there.
Let me just switch that around and come back to that for sure. So,
yeah,
so part of it is the TR's got a sort of a weave in the top that stiffens the handle end. Also brings the balance point up a little bit, but it feels, because the grip end's stable. It's kind of like those of that modish design in the irons. Stiffer butt end that just then gives you that where you load it, you change direction quite strongly. You stress that up a bit of the shaft. So that's got to be fairly stout to kind of hold on and feel firm enough.
things with the technique. Sometimes you start reacting to the shafts and clubs that you've got, don't you?
And particularly if, like you're a field player, you're someone who will play a load of shots and you'll react to what you see in the ball flight. It won't be a case of technique. You'll see a shot and then what you see will affect what you do.
Yeah.
You're more likely to kind of a bit of play with what you've got on the day, I think. But
yeah, definitely.
Play the right shot for the right scenario rather than just go to this is what I do every single shot.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's trying to think actually what point was I trying to make there? So I lost my own train of thought.
About reacting to
but it's
clubs.
It's then a case of you're not going to go back and say, right, this is the swing that I make every time. I must stick rigidly to that. You're going to go, right, this is what I'm doing. What have I got to feel to make it work? And if you've got to react to and manipulate, then the problem is you're constantly dropping each side of the line,
Yeah.
And so going out and going, right, I know that 9 times out of 10, this is the exact shot that through the bag I'm going to get.
Yeah.
Because if you can just stand and deliver with, say, the driver, but you've got to then manipulate the irons, it's hard to stand and deliver with the driver if you can't do the same feel all the way through.
Yeah,
Hence
no,
that
exactly what
in
you're saying.
particular is just like a complete anomaly.
I always have a different feel for every club in my bag.
Yeah. And the more we can eliminate that, the better.
Definitely. Seemed to feel like it jumped a bit more, that one.
A little more launch. Yeah, a little bit more launch. Again, same kind of delivery, which is nice. Did that feel less connected?
The strike wasn't as good,
Okay.
But it still feels good. The other one felt very good though.
Okay.
Feels okay. I think the other one I had more awareness of the club head on the other one.
Okay.
So if that makes sense.
Yeah, so again,
It's quick though, that head, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so some of when we did it the first time we hit them, granted it was with the Matt who beasts everything.
Yeah.
But I went, my God, the ball speed off
they're
this
quick.
series. I mean, even to the TSR4 driver, you suddenly don't feel like you haven't got to be Adam Scott to make it work.
No.
Very, very impressive.
I can get the same ball speed with the TaylorMade M6 Rocket as I can with my driver.
Yeah.
I've had to go with one of those. So, if anyone can't play driver, buy one of those.
There you go, yeah.
Just unusable as a 3-wood though.
And that was part of the problem is that you're seeing a lot of players now using their 3-woods as they're starting to use them to go into greens.
Yeah.
So they want a bit more flight on them. But yeah, they just ended up getting too strong.
We end up with 2 drivers in the bag.
Yeah. Yeah, you end up with not enough differentiation. You've got the same shot out of 2 of them. A couple of shafts down this. Interesting. I think for kind of where that weight position is, the stability, I think we might well find it quite hard. I'll do with that, but it might find it quite hard to beat that TR. So part of it is that stability without wanting it to get balanced towards the toe end.
Okay.
That's the bit that makes it sort of, for want of a better phrase, interesting to beat that TR.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. The nice thing, distance is in a great spot.
It's not too hot.
25 on from the good 2 irons, and you're about 30 back. So driver's pitching around where that's running out to. So it's not coming out and absolutely just careering forwards.
The ball speed's a lot quicker than I thought it'd be.
Just came out of that.
Yeah, that was a bad swing. But still, it's on the golf course for me.
Let's see one with it. I'll put the Ventus back in.
One more, swap it over.
Watch one more of that. Doesn't look quite, it's not bad, just I'm not sure it looks quite as crisp.
No, agreed, no.
It's just that second one is the one that makes you go, you know what, we didn't see that with the other one. But it just kind of looked like it just got underneath you a little bit, and some of it, even if it's psychosomatic, it's the brand-wise same, which is the blue TR versus the black. The black in a fairway could be a little bit tip dead. Where we want to retain that little bit of spin. I don't want to kill all the spin out of it.
And I find if I have something that's too stiff, it ends up just like it turns into that driver flight. Yeah. And then just doesn't have any. And like 3-wood, I'd like to be able to, hit some cuts, hit some draws. And we've got a couple of holes at our place, 4 and 10, where I will hit 3-wood, almost as drawing it as much as I can with 3-wood and take the corners out.
Down and
yeah. So I don't want it too dead going.
And again, you don't want to do that and have all the spin come off it.
No. Yeah, this feels better.
This looks point and shoot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Numbers are better with it as well.
Yeah, just you can see straight away. Just there was nothing extra going on through the ball.
No, and it feels like the irons. The difference between this and my shaft is like the difference between my iron shafts and the ones that you fitted it for. It's just tighter.
Yeah.
And I can still hit okay shots with it, but it's behaving the same every single time, whereas they all feel like they behave slightly differently.
Oh, this is the thing. It's a slight variant around the same model, but it's where the different materials are changes the weight profile around, changes the feel. Structure it's stiffer under your hands. It's going to feel a little bit more crisp through the ball. You're not having to fetch the bottom end through it with it. Couple of little tweaks. Let's hit. It's a little more draw.
Yeah.
But that's kind of your shot we were talking about on that 10, maybe with a little bit more draw than that, but that's maintained just under 3,000 spin. Yeah, that's still holding a little bit of flight. It's not got that.
It's not doing
kind
that.
of dip.
Do you mind if I try and shape a couple?
Of course, yeah. Just looks really under control. Yeah.
Let's try and go the other way. Not that I have to try too hard to go the other way, but because the last thing I want to do is play a hole where I'm going to shape it and it come out straight. Yeah,
I think there's a good thing with that. It's not that you've overturned the face. That's just where you're going for a swing. So that's that one off the 10.
Yeah, that's what I've tried to do. Yeah.
So you've got, in terms of amount of shot shape, you've got 27 yards of shot shape on it.
Yeah.
But we've kept a reasonable spin to it. It's 266.
It's whether it stays with me when I do those shots, because if you try and play a fade and it drops here, and you end up going like that, it needs to stay where...
the double cross, yeah. And that's when the previous one you've hit, in terms of fading shape, you hit 26 yards shot shape with it. But it's, that's all, it's just you've gone for a big amount of shape. But equally speaking, you can play a little bit with it, but it allows you to move it a long way and not lose the club face.
Yeah.
Look good.
So yeah, it does what I want it to do.
Yeah. So it's retaining enough spin to give you that control, and it's a little bit of a cut off the deck, a little lower on the face, so it's spun up a little bit more. But that's then giving you a really soft landing shot, should you want it.
Yeah.
But that's when we say, right, you've got a soft amount of shot shape. That's got, say 13, 13, 14 yards of shot shape, which for a 270-yard shot, that's the 3 bays width here. That's really not an awful lot.
No, no.
But most important, it's just like with the iron shafts, you can see it's just there and with you and really kind of connected.
Yeah.
So it would be whether, I'd say, well, it'd be whether you'd want to put it into, if you've got the TSI, it's whether you want to put it into the TSI first.
Okay.
You know,
See how it gets on.
TSI is working well. TSI is still a good head. It's whether the flight window is where you want it to be. We can definitely get the control onto it.
Okay.
If you'd want the flight a little bit stronger without having to drop loft down, then that would be an option. It's just a question of whether it's something you need to spend an extra few hundred quid on when it's not exactly a cheap shaft.
Yeah, no, exactly, yeah, and not something a club that makes or breaks my scoring, if I'm honest with you.
So I think shaft-wise, we can get it set up exactly like this with the TSI on.
Yeah.
And then, as I say, it's still going to be a really good club.
Yeah.
It's just,
Getting it right.
it's just going to be checking kind of where's that spin window fall, but the control's absolutely going to be there.
Yeah, I like it. It's amazing just those small differences. It's then where it's put in a place where you want it.
Yeah. And this one, because there were slight variations in the length based on the hosel length, this one's at 42.5. So it's, I mean, that 5 you got this 41.5, which is fairly short, but that takes it just a little under standard length.
Okay.
But again, that's just control side of things. Don't see
I'm
any
not trying to
reason
hit it.
change
I
from that.
don't want it going too far, otherwise it's pointless. And it needs that spin on it to be able to shape it.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of golf courses I play where I need to sort of cut round dog legs, or the shape of the hole at 260 starts moving in a different direction, and I don't really want to lay further back than that.
Yeah.
So I need to be able to hit those shapes to get it further up.
The 2-iron that could cannon and run.
Yeah,
Play a little bit of a softer shot shape.
You look somewhere like, I don't know, Burr Hill Old, for example, you need to hit a few shapes off the tee.
Yeah, that's very
Or
true.
you're laying back to the middle of the fairway with 4-iron the whole way round, and you're not going to shoot a great score from 150.
No, and when you've got the sort of distance you've got, you might as well make. Well, the thing is now it's what used to be long is now average.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And so we used to be young, but it is amazing how much that's moved on. You think 310, 320 with a driver is what pretty much everyone out there's doing now.
Definitely.
Old and weak and hitting it. That with my driver speed. So you've got to work on getting that up a little bit. I'm at 300, 305, and it's long enough.
No.
But 20 yards more would be quite nice. Thanks,
yeah. And keeping it as long as possible
that
now.
takes rather a lot of effort.
Yeah, I never used to get, not many people used to knock it past me. Now it happens a lot.
Yeah.
And you see people, I've got, friends of mine that are in 180, 190 ball speeds. Yeah. I think the equipment allows people to go quicker at it now.
100%.
You couldn't have done that, definitely when I was in, there wasn't light enough or strong enough to be able to do it.
Yeah, so accumulation, you got the ball went to the Pro V1, came out, and that dropped spin. That then allowed the launch to go up and keep the spin down. Then the heads got designed around that. Then they made them more forgiving. Shaft technology improved, so you could get away with more with the driver.
Yeah.
And now golfers are athletes.
Yeah.
It's a facilitated the human to get as good as it is now.
Yeah.
Hence, 115, 116 with the driver speed now for an elite golfer is average.
To bottom end,
More than 20 plus is because you can do it now. We were taught to control it and then build speed into it, or now smash the hell out of it and then control it because you can. Hence the pro game's almost irrelevant for most people to watch, other than just a freak show. That it's
a shame. It rules a lot of the courses that we play in Surrey out of having tournament golf.
Yeah, I think it's much more relevant to watch the ladies play.
Yeah.
They're hitting, that as a driver, other than Chiari's at 300 yards. But so we're going to see that coming into the ladies' game as well. But yeah, it's much more relevant to watch and the way they plot their way around the courses because they're playing 4 to 6 yard courses. But so it is a shame that some of the courses now, the venerable old courses, just are obsolete for the top players. Other than do what they did in Australia, and they're firm and fast and crazy fast greens, and then you kind of restrict it by that side of it, but you can't do that everywhere. So,
no. And as I say, it'd be nice to see, tournament golf return to places like Sunningdale and places like that. But you could shoot 58 and not be leading.
It's going to be the seniors, isn't it? It's relevant for those guys. So yeah.
These wedges are a little old. So the 60's pretty new.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a very recent one.
Yeah, that was to just try and get the
grind.
yeah, try and get the right sole for the turf that we're playing off.
This up because
yeah, onto the shorter mat.
So it's relative to with where the wedges are in terms of setup. Is there anything that you feel you're enjoying particularly about them, and that you feel sort of missing from a shot type, or for example, a kind of like turf interaction from sort of bunkers or pitching shots?
Bunkers are fine because I always like to play low bounce 60, high bounce 56, because then it gives you the options out of sand without having to have loads of wedges. I don't know, to be honest with you. And so, I don't practice it enough. Like chipping's okay. Pitching, I don't really practice enough. I've tried to in the last couple of months. I would have had no idea how to hit a 60-yard shot. For me would have been, if the flag 60 yards, try and hit it that far. I've tried to get a little bit more positional. But yeah, I'm not a wonderful pitcher.
And would you prefer to see them coming in a sort of a lower
as
flight?
Low as possible? Yeah, okay. I don't think you can hit a wedge shot low enough. For me.
Yeah.
Would you want me to hit some pitch shots, some full shots?
Kind of knockdown ones, yeah. Okay. So kind of 3/4. So I thought with the 56 it's going to be like a 90-yard or something like that. Okay. Yeah, 91. That'll do.
Shorter.
Oh, so I moved the aim a little bit. So the flag just to the left of the white line.
Oh, okay.
That'll be a kind of start line.
I don't know where the face is a little older. It's popping up a little too high. I don't know if there's enough.
I know with angle attacks not stick. That last one was only 2 degrees down.
Was it?
So but older face will do that as well. Okay, so I would say it's just whether this is getting. It's whether it's a little bit under.
It definitely feels like it is. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see. So in theory, the 60 should feel a little more comfortable to swing because the swing rate's about a point lighter, so it should feel a bit more, a little bit better connected through the swing. It still drops under a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. It's probably through historically being a bit more inside and drawn. That's where the pitching, so face closing down is where the distance control and flight control, that's probably where your historically would have been a little bit when you're on, but distance control just not quite as tight as you like it.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm coming across these as well, so.
Okay. Better contact. Yeah, that was a little square. Okay, I'll get something that's a little more towards the irons in terms of balance. Just get that a little bit tightened up through the swing weighting.
With a 52, do you tend to see like a softer iron profile? Would you, like with the wedges, or do you tend to match it in with the irons, or depending on how people hit it?
Yeah.
Okay, all of those.
Definitely maybe kind of thing. I think what you tend to, because my 50 is kind of a shorter version of the pitch wedge, I will match that. I've matched that to my irons.
Okay.
Do I want to go heavier? No. So because I'm hitting it 3/4 to full shot, so I'm not really playing. I play some feely ones with it, but it's a fairly stock swing. Then when I go to the next to the 56 and the 60, I've gone to something which has a bit more balance in the tip, but I've always been a little pull handle forward. So I use the bottom end a bit more in the short swings through deficiency in technique. So actually probably where your wedges would kind of suit my feel a little bit more, use the bottom end a bit more. I think for you, if we can kind of like the irons, even off the balance a little bit, get them down where it's a D3 on the 6 iron, we're on D4, 4 and a bit. You can get them more like D4.5, D5.
Okay.
We'll see how that one reacts just from a timing point of view.
What loft's on this one?
So that one's a 56. I've gone slightly lighter in shaft. It might be that the dynamic golds aren't necessarily a bad shaft weight. It may just be that they're slightly head heavy. But. Okay, so a little less dead weight looks cleaner.
It didn't feel like it was in here.
Yeah, yeah. You could definitely see a little bit of a tendency just with those to get there and then that way through,
Definitely.
and that's then where the distance control goes off.
Yeah. Yeah, if a club was super heavy down this end, that's what it feels. It feels like I'm hitting them from here, and no matter what I tried technique-wise, it's always going there.
And some of that'll just be where the shaft weight goes up to 134, 35 grams in the S400. So we're in line with the iron shafts with this. So the main difference really is that this one's the wedge specific shaft with a slightly softer tip. The Tour V shaft is a bit of a firmer tip. So this is the high rev, so it doesn't change launch angle much. It's a feel thing. It's more for a slightly softer feel.
Yeah.
But it's much better connected through the swing.
Yeah, it feels 100 times better. Yeah, because with my ones, if I set up square, I'd feel like it was right in here. I have to set open.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the path lines with your current were 4.5 inside, 6.5 inside, 4, and then we're at 1.5, 2.5, 3. But face to path 0.1, 1.6, 1.7, and yours were 1.7. 1.9. So actually, face control is pretty good. Face control is consistent, but it's the path dropping inside. So that then means a little bit less. You're not as able to get on top and squeeze it and get that launch angle down without it getting over left on you.
None of these have felt stuck.
Yeah, so that one there, you've then got better impact with 5 down, dead square on the path, launch angles down a couple of degrees, spins up.
Yeah,
so
and I feel like I can hit down on this a bit more.
Yeah.
Now, I felt if I hit down on mine, I'm moving the path even further that way, so I can't do it.
Yeah, because that also looks like on that one, you can get the club exiting left a little more. So you can get it there and then that way, and then the face stays there, as you say, rather than it dropping kind of, if you get ahead of it, or if you try and get on top of it, the handle's going to go forward, club back, and then you've got that catapult round.
Yeah, these feel great. Let's put it back a bit.
Yeah, so face to target, a hair closed, but putting it back as
I'll put it
the
right
path
back,
inside a little bit, but it's not lassoing. It's not, sent the path a bit, but it's not that 4 to 6.
Can I see what it feels like on a full shot?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's so much better.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the full swing was always going to be a bit more comfortable, being a little less heavy, a bit more even weighted, basically more like your irons, shafts that we're looking at. It was whether on the shorter swings, whether you needed the weight to kind of drop it in. But again, this goes back with you being more someone whose move is that, rather than, I've always been kind of that and pull the handle. That's where I need the weight to drop it in. Otherwise, I'm going straight into the ground. For you, where it's more there, the weight goes that way and then out there. Whereas for me, it kind of helps me get to there and drop it and stay on line. So where you're more that body move, that's where going heavier on the wedges isn't a good thing. So keep them flat line through. It's more a question of whether you want the wedge specific shaft, which is a little bit softer in the tip. Starting to get a little bit more feel through. Technically spins a little bit, fractionally. But it's on softer shots, you're going to feel a bit more give through the shaft. Not major differences down the wedges. There's not a lot of shaft to move, but it's designed to be a little bit more spin.
So I dropped that one more than I had any of the others. I feel that was the first bad swing I've put on one of those.
But because of the loft, you've got 7 yards of shot shape and it's 7 foot left. What it's not doing is hanging out right. So it comes through and you're able to get the face back on the ball and square it up. So if you take it right down to just a little half shot.
Sort of what, 60
So,
yards?
I guess, yeah. So if you want to take a little bit of spin off, got a pin at the back of the green. Yeah, it's just with you better.
Yeah, it does. It does
Yeah.
feel like that.
Yeah. So it's because the weight's the same. This is more a question on what feel you want.
It feels so much better.
But I think.
Can I just swing mine again, just so I
Yeah,
can...
of course. Which one? Got the 56.
Yeah, 56. Yeah.
Normally get the wrong one.
Yeah.
Which should.
You can feel it
club
statically.
will probably be a quite appropriate word.
Yeah.
You can always see it in the backswing, actually. You can always see a little bit of a. So that's then path good, face turn over. You can always see a little bit more of that happen. It's a bit of a kind of exaggerate that way, and then have to.
I think with the weight, it's almost making the shaft feel softer. I don't know.
It will a little bit. Yeah, you'll be more because you can. It is heavier in the head, so you can feel the bit on the bottom. So it's going to amplify any sensation of give through the shaft. So, yeah. So, but straight away there, that's then, shaped. It's not a lot of shape, but it's starting on line and then going left. So you've then got to start it right. Because again, it's that drops behind, so the face is turning around.
It just doesn't feel as sloppy, the one that you've given me.
Yeah.
Again, you'd hard it on a golf course, you wouldn't immediately notice the difference, but you can feel it.
When you've got them side by side to compare with, then it's quite obvious.
Yeah, and again, I suppose it's a scenario, if I've got 85, 90 yards to a tight left flag, for me with mine, I'm aiming at the middle of the green. Because if I aim at that flag, there's a chance, you're making bogey or worse aiming at it. Whereas those, I feel like I could aim a little straighter at the flag.
With all those, there was one a little bit more shape there, but you've got, these are the ones with that one, they're just down the line. They say quieter, was quieter numbers in the face to path. Whereas the one back with current one, that's then the one which puts you one bounce spins into the bunker, and especially our 18th green with the you don't want anything curving that way.
No.
So
they feel really comfortable.
So it's for me, it kind of makes it because it's feel rather than a different performance. Yeah. It makes sense just to play the wedge shaft in the wedges. I think the gap wedge, your first one back, is the one where if you hit more full shots, do you want that slightly stiffer feel?
I would almost never hit a full wedge.
Okay,
because it just launches for me. It just launches, and I would never. Yeah, the only time you're hitting it is if it's rock hard. Yeah. And so then sort of feels irrelevant because you're swinging it so fast to try and stop it. I think
keep that one in.
Yeah, definitely.
Makes the wedges a kind of a group of them and a family of them, and just
agreed.
A marginal.
Agreed.
Marginally more responsive feel. So this is what I'll get on our little board and have a look at the grinds. I mean, part of it, I would be inclined to say, better to go more towards 50 and then make that more like a 55. I think that gap, unless we go stronger on loft, it's just going to end up being big.
Okay.
So
you go 50, 55, 60.
Yeah, and then it might be 51, it might be 49 and a half, it might be, but I think that is the base because we're only going to have to strengthen loft on the 52 to get it up to distance. Fresh grooves are going to spin a little bit more anyway as well. But that way you're not then having to force it or having to turn it in there to get the distance. No,
and there is the gaps in my sets are between, the biggest gaps are between 52 pitching wedge, 9 iron. There's just, it just doesn't feel like at the top of the bag I can hit my numbers quite consistently. I actually do it less so with the shorter irons, which isn't.
Yeah, and you've got to say over 6 degree gap there, so you've got a club and a half gap, and that's the one where when you change the construction of the head, the face with the milling, that's where the spin differential goes up the most. So that's where you might almost go to a slightly narrower gap between the pitch and the gap from a loft point of view, comparative to what goes below, to keep the gapping the same. So I think starting at the 50, I would keep. Oh, that's a 12. So I would say you don't need to go up to the 12 degree bounce. Either. Keep it at the 8.
Keep it at 8. Yeah.
It's just gonna again just tighten up the strike a little bit.
100%. And keep 56, 60. I like having that lot of bounce. So. Okay. Just because you sometimes play a golf course where there is so much sand. It is nice to be able to open up that 56 with a big bounce on it and just chuck it underneath it. And for bunker play, having the different ones works.
Because that's what I was going to say is with that one, if you've not, in the F grind, in the 56, if you were, it's just that question of whether the S is a little more rounded than back edge, so it's.
If anything, I'd prefer to go more bounce than forward. Yeah. That's how I.
Okay.
Because I'll play like flop shots off sitting off lies with the 56 and just get the
yeah,
handle sort of. I'll play it like that.
Okay, where the ball sort of perched up a little bit.
Sits it up, so I play that shot a lot rather than going to. When most people would go to their 60, I'll increase the bounce on that and play it with 56.
So is there? Well, I don't think they do one even more. They don't do like a wide.
No, I wouldn't want to go more, but if there was a choice, if you said 16 or 12, I would probably edge towards 16.
Okay, so let's keep the effort next.
Yeah, and I don't really open up the faces of a 56.
Okay, so it's either if it's fluffy underneath or soft sand, then that's where the bounce comes in. Otherwise, playing. Okay.
Yeah, I think just because I've played that.
If it was going to be an issue, you'd have found it with that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So, okay.
And also, when it's on tighter turf with that, I find the leading edge sips up a bit more. It flights it a little lower and a little spinnier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll bring it down on the face
just
a little bit contact-wise. So yeah, let's get a little look at.
And worst case scenario, you'd always take the back edge off, couldn't you?
And so you can always soften it a little, because it would only be the very back edge
where
that kind of back ledge sits. You just very slightly round it, just so that it doesn't sit quite so hard.
Yeah.
And that would just let it have a little bit more of a skid rather than a catch and kick. So
Okay.
easier to take it down
off,
a little bit. Yeah. What was I going to do? Let's just have a look at. I mean, this thing goes the opposite way. Lets you crank it open. It'll sit nice and tight.
Yeah, which occasionally you need.
I'll just get a little look.
Say around our place, you can putt a lot if you miss a green. It's not really a short game golf course.
It's true, actually.
There's not a lot of. It's not very tough round the greens. If you get it off the tee, it's not terribly tough round the greens.
Interesting.
Yeah, you don't.
Thought about. Yeah, it's quite
a lot of 3-wood putting and things like that, rather than you don't have a lot of sort of tight shots over bunkers and things like that.
Let's just see, just that little.
Get me a chipper.
This grinding. Your ping with that chipper, they sold so many more than they thought they were going to.
Yeah.
I mean, they obviously did their research with it and worked out that actually a lot of golfers aren't very good at chipping.
No,
If you make it easy, make it like a putter in terms of weight setup and things, but with an 8-iron loft.
It works.
So 50-60 yard, absolute standard.
Okay.
Neutral kind of shot. Okay, let's take a little bit of a look at that. So yeah, where it's got the tee grind's got that bit of graduation, at least it's not riding that front edge, so that rib, that peak gives you something to use.
Yeah.
Just then a little open up, if you've got a little kind of pop one up, a little kind of 30-yard pop up where green sits above you.
Okay.
Just a little floating.
See, I'd start doing that with lowering the handle.
That's probably where that grind sits really well. Because it trails off on the heel. Yeah, so that's where you're then right onto that. Onto that, but then it gets out of the way. It's one of those where, let's just so the camera can see what we're talking about. So the main first strike was that darker one there. So not too near the leading edge. But then you've got the little rib and the tee grind there. So that's when it then graduates off. So that's why it stops there. Poor old James has been sat there looking at a computer screen. So that first mark there, not too near the leading edge, but using enough of the sole. On the tee grind, it graduates away. Second one, where Sean drops his hands down, just more onto that rib, onto the line there. So, but because the heel gets out of the way, it can take the strike, and then you're actually kind of using that bit behind.
Pop it up.
So it's one where if you were, that'll just, if I get that right, you'll just see that little ridge in the sole that we were talking about there. So the tee grind here is really designed around, certainly a bit of a tighter turf, but a lot of the signal of the tour guys use it because of that ability to open that up and get that leading edge sat tight. So if you're someone who works it that way, it stops that leading edge really sitting up. So where you work that open, and the turf being a little tighter, and then having a high bounce in the 56 to use there. For some players, it'd be a little bit aggressive on the grind.
Yeah, I think where we have such really tight turf, and it's not, it gets really baked out. You really need to get the neck underneath it on a lot of really tight chip shots.
So if you play, you can play on off.
Just because it'll almost sit down into the grass.
And
it's tight, so you're almost sort of just playing it off the neck, and sliding it under.
takes that.
Yeah, you
skid
have
through.
to. Yeah.
So I think with that, I mean, this is pretty darn new as well. These only came out not that long ago.
Yeah,
anyway.
no.
So I think that with that's just a case of changing the shaft over, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah,
I really like that. And
shaft.
also, I'll occasionally, if I've got I'll stand it up this way and putt with it.
Okay. Yes. Use the
So
toe,
then I can
toe
use
side
that
a
end
little
and
bit
sort
more.
of putt with it that way.
Okay, yeah, and again that graduation round where the toes ground off as well.
Yeah.
That then doesn't catch. So where you're laying it heel high, heel low, because your strike is accurate enough, and if you're playing in US turf, might be a little bit.
Definitely,
You're probably
yeah.
more to an M grind, so you've
Yeah.
got a bit more soul to use. But off our turfs here, if you're playing those sort of differential shots and really cranking it open, then
It's almost seasonal here. You almost need the 56 through the winter and the 60 in the summer. Really.
yeah, and that would really be, again, if you're depending on what sort of golf you're playing, where you're playing.
Yeah.
For most of the kind of Surrey course, say winter, something like that, or in a nice sort of claggy January day, you might go, I'm just going to open the 56 up and give it some protection.
Exactly what I'll do, yeah.
There is that option, or you'd play something like, even if it's the M grind, it's got a wider sole profile
Yeah.
to give you a little bit more protection when it's soft.
I think ideally I'd like to have two 60s.
Yeah.
Or just have a 58 that you could use split the difference in the winter. But I don't play a lot of competitive golf in the winter.
I think that's the thing. I think that would really be, the extravagant way of doing it is say, okay, we'll just have the two. Have one with higher bounce that gives you a little more protection for the it's turf types. You're not going to get soft bunkers in winter, but then you kind of need the other one for the bunkers for the winter. So it's a bit of a difficult one.
The option is definitely having two wedges.
Yeah.
So.
I think the option's there if you wanted it, and very, very easy to match in and do.
Yeah.
But I'd just go more to the M where it takes the peak of the sole about another half a centimetre back, gives you quite a lot more width to use, which protects against the really claggy turf. But I think that's there for you if you wanted to do it. But I think it's really replicating what you've got, but a bit less loft. Probably 1 degree less on the sand wedge, depending on distances, and get it down to 50 on the first wedge, on your approach wedge.
Interesting. Okay.
And get those shaft weights down in line with the irons.
I couldn't believe the difference that made.
Yeah, it's really
almost
stark.
more. Even more than the irons.
Yeah, the irons are only a 5 gram difference, really, 5 or 6. Whereas you're looking at 10 or so. And
Yeah.
by the time you get to the wedges with S4, that's the S4 being the heavier tolerance end, it just kicks it up that little bit more.
And I even feel
the
like
swing weights are up a little bit more on the wedges as well.
even what you were saying with sort of the 56-yard shots, I even feel it if I'm just sort of chipping. It almost feels like it gets stuck a little bit.
It will do,
Even
with
just sort of
any
little-
of them. Yeah, and if you wanted to play, particularly say a bunker shot, if you really want to kind of cut the legs out from under it, it's going to be hard. It's going to want to drop in and get maybe a little bit slappy in terms of strike, almost a bit
Pushy.
bounce into the back of the ball rather than being able to really kind of cut the legs out and zip across with some pace.
Yeah.
So should give a little more versatility into the wedges as well. And one thing to have a ponder about, should you wish to, we have a nice laser machine in there. So if you wanted anything funky on the wedges,
Yeah, that's quite cool.
can do anything you like. But it's easiest to do before build when they can just put a head in there. So if that's something you wanted to do, be able to film quote, picture of your dog.
Daughter's name,
Daughter's name, anything at all.
That's
just
it.
don't put Shanker or swear on. So I think that balance-wise, I think we really, that top bit, I think we tied it up quite a bit. In particular by getting 2 on with a bit more loft, bring it close to the irons. I think the 4 on will improve with the lighter shaft as well. So that should, the consistency of gapping, and then getting a 3 wood in that actually plays, I guess that's reliable for one, but as soon as you get that flight in the right window, then your options in terms of what shot type, distance, shaping.
I don't want the only option to be driver off the tee. I want to be able to use those.
I think then there'll be multiple, and it should all be really reliable as well.
Yeah.
And then really it's grip. So it's whether, see that one doesn't have the align on, the rest
They
have
all
the
do,
align on.
That's getting hold of grips.
Right,
The,
being
the
a
challenge.
difficulty of the last couple. Is the align the preference?
Yeah, I really like the align. I've always just been standard one bit of tape, but I don't know if there's any science to it or.
It's a mixture of theory and practice. I should watch our latest video.
Okay.
But no, essentially we're looking at, so it's kind of wingspan hand-wise, so hand makeup. So I've got sort of deeper palm of the finger portion, but it's that distance there, that diagonal, because that's where your hand sits. It sits across that diagonal there as the longest one. So we're looking for it to fit fit there. So,
Just because I've never explored anything else.
so you could go a little bit bigger. Top of the grip's in a good size, little fingers round past the centre, that clamps it in, but you've got a bit of overlap there.
Okay,
and that means a bit of space, and therefore you might find a bit of a regrip, or you might find that when you've hit a shot, come back, that when you address it again, that's just twisted around a little bit.
Okay. So what, you maybe go another couple of layers of tape under there, maybe?
I think so, and the other bit's also bottom hand, so you put your right hand on for me, is that, it's not to look at how it sits in that finger. So maybe you ought to close it down a little bit more than we'd like. Maybe a slightly less taper will mean that can just sit on the grip rather than just having to close
I've felt those ones that don't have any taper. I don't like the feel.
Oh, what, the plus fours?
Yeah,
I wouldn't go that much.
Okay.
I wouldn't go that much. Yeah, I'll get you a grip that's got a couple of extra tapes all the way through. Because the plus fours are like building 4 layers through the bottom.
Yeah, I really don't enjoy that feel.
So let's go. And this is where it is that it's got to feel right.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So that's got a couple of extra tapes on.
Yeah, that feels a bit better.
Yeah, so it's a little less overlap and dig.
I think 3 layers maybe.
And then that just sits more in that thing, because that's 3 layers in total.
Yeah, right, okay.
Do you want to get one?
No, I think
bigger?
that feels. No, I think I don't feel like I can push my fingers into that pad. They're sitting there, but I don't feel like I can push them in.
And that's where, going back to that, it'll feel like they.
Yeah, I can dig those into there.
Dig those in, and that just means it can move around a little bit.
Yeah.
So filling them out, more finger to grip contact, a little less pressure.
Yeah.
Which again, a little less sort of hardness, and so just building it up a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they've just.
But that also, it was the same, sort of a proportionately the same build up top and bottom. So,
yeah.
So if you go too big in the bottom hand, I think because you're quite tactile as a player, you're going to lose that little bit of feel in the. If you get it out the tips of the fingers, then it can feel like a.
I've got a mid-sized grip with a couple of layers of tape on it with a graphite shaft 8-iron Callaway thing that I warm up with, it takes all my wrists and hands out of it, and it feels horrible. It's just nice to warm up with because it doesn't weigh anything, and it's clip a few away.
Got it.
Cool.
So, and would you want to keep? Oh, you've got them at the moment. I mean, I keep the rib into the wedges. We've got the rib all the way through. Would you retain that as well?
Yeah. I'd be quite happy playing either these or those, whatever. I think the thing for me with having the rib is it means when I'm playing a shape of shot, I know where the face is.
Okay.
It just gives it under my hands that I know that it's open.
Yeah.
I think that's what I like about having the reminder.
Yeah, I've used them for my whole playing. Mainly I used to get have a strong grip, but I kind of felt like, as you say, I could put it into a crook of the fingers and know it was in short game. You know it's in there or there, and it sets it a little bit. Yeah. It's a familiarity. I find it I like the way it fills out.
Yeah, definitely. It's the first time I've ever done it, sort of the last 2 years, and I definitely think, especially when you're hitting, really want to shape it, you can really feel where it's open. So good.
Yeah, I'd keep that all the way through then. And so if it hasn't got in the way, if you kind of like that reference point as a setting with the wedges as well. So some players will go round in the wedges because of manoeuvring it around.
Okay.
But again,
I think if you're ending up with it like over here or something, it'd be a problem. But you're not moving it miles. No, I think keep with that.
Yeah, keep it all the way through.
Yeah, I think so.
So basically, to summarise, I think I'd say for golf like you, it's fine-tuned. You've got the ability to hit all the shots, but it's how easy is it to manoeuvre around and get the stock swing with each club through the bag, giving you a representative result. And so it's relative fine-tuned, but actually, because you've got so few shots to play with, it actually makes
huge
similar
difference.
Impact as somebody who's got completely the wrong set makeup.
Yeah.
I think driver good. I think it's more a little bit of set up in terms of where the bear is, but actually the shot pattern the same each time. And I think if that's a club that's working well,
definitely,
if it ain't broke, let's not try and fix something which you're really confident with.
Yeah.
If by changing other bits, maybe this doesn't feel quite the same, then
Have a look
revisit. At it. But I think for that one, that's the flight was great, ball speed great, the principle of the club head shaft, everything makes sense. So let's say it's not changed something.
Yeah, face was just coming out a little sharp, but maybe not.
But I think that's more because if you're used to setting up on the left side the tee box, or you're man at home and aiming up the right and hitting a draw, well, from this side it's not as dourable. So it's automatically going to send you a little bit more to the left, and they're all basically ending up left edge of the fairway. So if there hadn't been a consistent pattern to it, then maybe worth looking at. But I think let's leave a club that you like a lot.
Yeah.
And so great components as well. Leave that well alone. let's go back to the early part of the fit. Irons wise, it's just dead weight down a little bit. You know, if we throw the balance off through it too much down the bottom end, that's where as you fire, the club head gets out of the sink, and then it creates a bit of a catapult. So both irons and wedges, we could see that happening. The wedges are a little heavier, so it's bringing those all in line with each other. Going to in the irons, the Torvey in 125. So that is, they call it an S+. It's actually one notch beyond the X in terms of their kind of Torvey series.
Okay.
It's like a Tor stiff.
Okay.
But so structurally very stable, nice and tight and crisp feel through, which helps control the face and the spin, but just means you're not having to fetch it as much, and just tidied up the margins in terms of shot shape and left-right dispersion. Similar to the wedges, at the moment they're just a bit sledgehammer-like, so they're just dropping in behind you, having to roll the face, and that's where I think the consistency in where they kind of fall a little bit out of line with the rest of the bag. We can just tidy that up a little bit, and that will let you get in a better impact position, launch it lower, and keep the face on line rather than have it rotate around. Just freshen up the heads on the lower two lofts, and tweak the lofts a little bit. And then 2-iron, really, it's just gone too light. So principle's fine, but just gone a little bit too far. So there's not enough club to use. And by going into steel, we can get it a progression off the irons rather than kind of a massive stark difference. And straight away, by going to the steel, we saw the left-right dispersion.
Yeah, it's amazing. It just feels less sloppy, tighter, all those little bits. They don't feel dreadful, any of those clubs. I feel like I could play golf with them, but as you say, I'm keen, I shape the ball quite a bit. It just brings those start lines down a bit, the dispersion a bit tighter, and confidence in the hands. It's not moving.
Yeah, if we can lose the big shift in club face, then because you're playing with shape, we can keep the start line within where your eyes want to see it start, within where you picture the ball fly, rather than going, well, hang on, that's just gone over there. And then you get back into fiddling around with the hands to find the shot again, rather than going, right, a stock swing does that, and does that with the driver, and does that with the fairway, and does that with the irons. So it's bringing that all into a line, really. And then through it, you look and go, well, it's a slight variant around the same model, but the construction's quite different. And that's just changed that weighting, going to feel a little tighter, and makes the balance a little more even again, which is exactly what we're looking at with the irons. And again, gets it to a point where it's a really reliable option rather than...
They don't feel similar at all, if I'm honest. They feel completely different.
They feel
completely
quite different beasts. It's got the same logo on it, via two little letters, but very, very different construction. So just, it's knitting everything together a little bit more so that these things can play shots rather than save shots.
Definitely. Definitely.
Nice bit of tightness all the way through.
Really good.
So
thank you so
great
much.
fun. Lovely to
really
see my very cold hand. Lovely to see you again. It's always great fun to see. And so someone playing what I would call an old school form of golf, shot shapes and seeing shots. So rather than just what are my numbers. So good fun. So lots of feel involved, which is always interesting to fit to, because it's of working out how you see shots and play them. And then the club's allowing you to do it. So yeah, really nice, good fun, good to catch up.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.